Good evening, cherished companions. Tonight, we shall embark upon a tranquil and deliberate expedition through the venerable realms of ancient myth and hushed historical accounts. Please, soften the illumination in your surroundings and nestle comfortably beneath your chosen covering. Permit the incessant clamor of the day to gradually recede into oblivion. Envision a civilization preceding the advent of digital streaming platforms, predating the ubiquity of television, and indeed, existing even before printed books became a common commodity. Within this bygone era, narratives were transmitted through the ether, migrating from one voice to another, meticulously preserved across successive generations, akin to cherished culinary traditions passed down within a family. The Hellenic peoples of antiquity disseminated their intricate mythology in precisely this fashion. Not through dazzling pyrotechnics or serialized sagas designed for compulsive viewing, but rather through spoken words that drifted softly through chambers illuminated by flickering firelight and amidst communal gatherings held beneath the open sky. Should Greek mythology be reimagined as a contemporary streaming series today, one would undoubtedly discover it replete with intricately developed personalities, improbable champions, and narrative arcs that intertwine in wholly unforeseen manners. Nevertheless, the original method of its telling was considerably more measured, more contemplative, reminiscent of the unhurried application of golden honey onto a slice of warm, freshly baked bread. Let us now unwind and delve into this profound world at the leisurely cadence it inherently merits. The inaugural sequence of such a show would commence with a depiction of Genesis, not through explosive computer-generated imagery, but through a serene emergence from a state of primordial disorder, a vast, yawning void. It was neither aqueous expanse, nor terrestrial solid, nor atmospheric expanse, but solely pure potentiality. From this ethereal nothingness coalesced Gaia, the venerable earth, who meticulously extended her being to sculpt the formidable mountains and verdant valleys one might traverse during a serene afternoon stroll. In the mythos, she was not merely composed of geological formations and fertile soil. She embodied the very essence of rock and soil itself, a patient and perpetually enduring presence. As one sinks deeper into a state of relaxed repose, contemplate Gaia giving birth to Uranus, the boundless sky, who would subsequently become her consort. Together, they engendered the formidable Titans, beings who moved across the nascent world not with the frantic urgency characteristic of individuals inhabiting our modern metropolises, but with the unhurried majesty of those for whom eternity stretches endlessly before them. The Titans did not consult timepieces or harbor anxieties about punctuality. They immersed themselves fully in each passing instant, their footsteps resonating with a profound, measured solemnity as they traversed the youthful planet. Among these monumental Titans was Cronus, destined to eventually depose his progenitor, Uranus. This was accomplished not through spectacular, climactic battle sequences befitting a season's grand finale, but rather via a protracted, gradual stratagem executed with the unwavering patience of an artisan meticulously knitting a garment, stitch by careful stitch. Cronus patiently awaited the opportune moment, an act of waiting that the ancient Greeks profoundly understood. In an epoch devoid of instant telecommunications or rapid transit systems, the act of waiting was simply an intrinsic element woven into the very fabric of existence. Subsequently arrived Cronus's progeny, the revered deities of Olympus. Zeus and his divine siblings did not burst onto the cosmic stage accompanied by dramatic musical crescendos. They emerged gradually, with a delicate precision akin to tender seedlings pushing through fertile soil following a gentle spring downpour. Zeus, who was fated to ascend as the sovereign of the gods, spent his formative years concealed within a secluded grotto on the island of Crete. Hearkening to the soft, rhythmic dripping of water from stalactites and the distant, soothing bleating of the goat Amalthea, his devoted wet nurse. The cavern was cool and dimly lit, mirroring perhaps the tranquil ambiance of your current surroundings. Zeus would recline for countless hours, simply absorbing the ambient sounds. The subtle rustling of foliage beyond the cave's entrance, the quiet respiration of his devoted protectors. There was no impetuous haste, no pervasive urgency, merely the languid passage of days, each one softly merging into the next. When Zeus ultimately confronted his father, Cronus, it was not a conflict contained within a single episode's duration. It constituted a protracted 10-year conflict, known as the Titanomachy, which unfolded with the majestic slowness of tectonic plate shifts. Engagements were punctuated by extensive periods of profound stillness, strategic deliberations that spanned multiple days, and serene nights during which combatants from both factions gazed upon the same constellations, contemplating their respective positions within the grand cosmic order. Following Zeus's ultimate triumph, he and his siblings apportioned the vast world amongst themselves. This allocation was not conducted within a corporate boardroom accompanied by bombastic pronouncements. They simply drew lots, a straightforward act determined by chance, accepting their designated domains with the quiet dignity of beings who comprehend that immense responsibility manifests in myriad forms. Zeus claimed dominion over the sky, Poseidon over the vast seas, and Hades over the mysterious underworld. There was no ostentatious fanfare, merely a profound acceptance. Let us pause at this juncture and envision Mount Olympus, not as a bustling nerve center of frantic divine activity, but rather as a realm where the very flow of time is fundamentally altered. The gods did not hasten from one crisis to the next. They reposed within their resplendent golden halls, partaking of nectar that tasted of sun-warmed honey and blossoms that unfurled solely beneath the most delicate moonlight. They engaged in colloquies that meandered like a slowly flowing river, touching upon subjects both profound and mundane with an equally unhurried curiosity. Hera, Zeus's august spouse, would dedicate entire afternoons to the meticulous arrangement of floral displays within her private chambers, selecting each individual bloom with deliberate precision, caressing the soft petals between her fingers, and inhaling fragrances so ethereal that only a goddess could truly perceive them. Imagine her hands moving with the stately slowness of clouds, transforming their shapes as she crafted arrangements destined to endure for decades, never wilting, never losing their vibrant hue. Athena, the sagacious goddess of wisdom, did not accrue knowledge through frantic periods of study or instantaneous digital searches. She contemplated profound concepts for centuries, turning intricate ideas over in her mind as one might gently caress smooth riverstones in the palm of a hand. She would recline beneath an olive tree, her sacred botanical emblem, and listen to the subtle whisper of its silver-green leaves for protracted hours, discerning profound wisdom within the silent interstices between sounds. And Apollo, the divine patron of music, among other domains, did not compose hurried melodies for easily distracted audiences. His divine music unfolded with the majestic patience of the changing seasons. Each individual note was afforded ample space to fully resonate before the subsequent one was introduced. To experience Apollo's lyre performance was to transcend all perception of time's passage, to exist solely within the gentle, flowing current of sound. Were this a contemporary streaming series, we might impulsively rush to the most thrilling installments: Perseus's heroic decapitation of Medusa, Theseus's courageous confrontation with the formidable Minotaur. However, in the original narratives, these legendary heroes spent considerably more time immersed in prosaic moments. Perseus traversing dusty thoroughfares, his sandals gradually succumbing to wear. Theseus sitting in profound silence aboard a vessel, observing the horizon blur where the sea met the sky. The heroes of Greek mythology were not perpetually engaged in combat or romantic entanglements. They prepared humble repasts over crackling campfires, meticulously mended their garments, and lay awake during the nocturnal hours, listening to the harmonious chorus of insects outside their dwellings. They grappled with insidious doubt that encroached slowly, like the lengthening shadows of evening, rather than experiencing dramatic crises of faith that conveniently resolved within a 45-minute segment, commercials notwithstanding. Let us now reflect upon Odysseus, whose arduous homeward voyage from Troy consumed a full decade. Modern adaptations frequently emphasize the encounter with the Cyclops, the alluring sirens, and other dramatic confrontations. Yet, the majority of Odysseus's epic journey was replete with more subdued moments, meticulously charting the movements of celestial bodies for navigation, discerning the tactile texture of the wooden railing beneath his seasoned hands, recounting ancient tales to his shipmates as they traversed tranquil waters. Envision countless days at sea where absolutely nothing extraordinary transpired. Only the rhythmic dipping of oars into the vast expanse of water, the low creak of the ship's sturdy hull, and the pervasive taste of salt on the circulating air. Odysseus would dedicate these days to mending sails, or simply observing the intricate interplay of light upon the undulating waves, his thoughts gently oscillating between cherished memories of home and a profound acceptance of the present moment. When the gods chose to intervene in human affairs, their actions were frequently subtle. There were no dramatic bolts of lightning or booming celestial pronouncements from the heavens, at least not typically. More often, they might manifest as a chance encounter with a fellow traveler on a winding road, offering sage counsel delivered in an utterly ordinary tone of voice, or they might subtly influence events through minor coincidences. A dropped coin that inadvertently steers a hero down an unforeseen path. A serendipitous meeting that irrevocably alters the trajectory of a life. The ancient Greeks intuitively understood that the majority of life's experiences unfold within these gentle, unremarkable moments. Their intricate myths eloquently reflected this fundamental truth. The truly spectacular occurrences were rare, isolated islands rising majestically from a boundless ocean of ordinary days, of routine actions performed with meticulous care and unwavering attention. As you continue to surrender to relaxation, perhaps drifting toward the delicate precipice of slumber, consider how the Greeks perceived the very essence of time itself, not as a commodity to be rigorously managed or ruthlessly maximized, but rather as a river flowing past at its own intrinsic pace. They embraced its current, neither striving to resist its flow nor attempting to construct barriers to hoard it for future utility. They simply existed harmoniously within its embrace, paying meticulous attention to the subtle details that collectively constitute a life lived with profound intention. What would our contemporary world resemble if we were to approach it with this unhurried Hellenic sensibility? If we were to dedicate time to observing the nuanced shifts of light across our kitchen tables, or the subtle, fleeting expressions that flit across a loved one's countenance during a mundane daily conversation, what profound insights might we unearth within the quiet interstices between our rigidly scheduled activities? Perhaps there lies profound wisdom within this more deliberate approach to narrative construction. This profound willingness to linger within moments that may not overtly advance the plot, but which invariably deepen our comprehension of the world and our intrinsic place within its grand tapestry. As you recline here, attentive and listening, perhaps you are presently experiencing a nascent taste of that ancient Greek approach to time. Fully present, deeply attentive, and utterly unhurried. In our forthcoming shared expedition, we shall encounter a distinguished individual who intimately understood the profound value of patience and meticulous attention to detail. A master craftsman whose skilled hands fashioned unparalleled marvels, but whose most significant accomplishment might have been the serene moments dedicated to instructing his beloved son. Daedalus of Athens awaits our arrival, not with tales of dramatic escapades, but with the subtle, profound magic of creation that quietly unfolds within the silence of focused endeavor, as we persist in our gentle pilgrimage through the quieter, more contemplative corners of Greek mythology. We shall now direct our focus towards an individual whose appellation may resonate with many, yet whose quotidian existence is largely unexamined within contemporary narratives. Daedalus, the Athenian artisan, while frequently immortalized for his prodigious engineering feats and profound missteps, such as the intricate labyrinth and the ill-fated wings fashioned from wax and plumage, the greater span of his years saw him merely as an exhausted artificer, striving diligently to navigate the demands of each passing 24 hours. Envision Daedalus commencing his day prior to the first blush of sunrise, not with any grand theatricality or fervent determination, but rather with the gradual, hesitant awakening characteristic of an individual perpetually deprived of sufficient slumber. His Athenian atelier was a humble affair, a compact edifice featuring flagstone floors, uneven and smoothed in certain areas by the ceaseless peregrinations of countless years. The nascent rays of morning sunshine would penetrate the confined apertures of the windows, casting a gentle glow upon motes of dust performing an ethereal ballet in the atmosphere, and highlighting the array of implements pertaining to his diverse occupations. Daedalus embodied what contemporary observers might label a polymath, a proficient sculptor, an innovative architect, an ingenious inventor, and a skilled engineer. However, the Hellenic civilization of his epoch did not possess such distinct classifications. For his contemporaries, he was straightforwardly a teknites, a master artisan who fashioned objects both aesthetically pleasing and eminently practical. His diurnal cycle would commence with the unadorned ceremony of kindling a modest blaze within a recessed corner of his workspace, not for any ostentatious display, but solely to warm a plain vessel of water destined for an herbal infusion, concocted from desiccated botanicals, harvested from the undulating slopes beyond the city ramparts. During the interlude, as the water slowly warmed, he would meticulously trace his digits across his implements, scrutinizing the keenness of a chisel's blade, lubricating the timber grip of a mallet, and systematically organizing and reordering the sundry articles upon his sturdy workbench. These tranquil intervals of preliminary activity were never hurried. They were executed with the measured, purposeful gestures of an individual whose hands had performed these identical actions countless millennia past. The populace of Athens recognized Daedalus not as a character from epic sagas, but rather as the weary individual frequently observed traversing the bustling agora during the twilight hours, his hands indelibly discolored by the persistent residue of clay, pigment, or fine wood particles. They would offer their salutations, to which he would respond with a customary inclination of his head, frequently too immersed in cogitations concerning an intricate challenge of architectural blueprint or structural execution to participate in protracted discourse. Daedalus was accompanied by a kinsman, his nephew Talos, occasionally identified as Perdix in subsequent chronicles, who fulfilled the role of his apprentice. The dynamic between them was devoid of the theatricality often associated with mentorship involving impassioned exhortations. Instead, their interaction primarily comprised companionable quietude, punctuated by intermittent directives. "Present me with that diminutive chisel." Observe closely the method by which I unite these two components. You have rendered this angle excessively acute. It requires a more curvilinear finish. During an ordinary working day, Daedalus might dedicate extensive periods to meticulously sculpting a wooden effigy of Athena, commissioned for a nearby sanctuary. This labor was far from glamorous. It necessitated the methodical paring away of minuscule shavings of timber, the repeated verification and reevaluation of dimensional relationships, and the periodic retreat to appraise the evolving form from varying perspectives. His lumbar region would frequently throb from the sustained posture of being hunched over his creation, yet he seldom registered the discomfort until the day's conclusion, when he would finally unbend and perceive the collective lament of his strained musculature. The completion of such a statue invariably spanned several weeks. There were no sudden flashes of artistic epiphany, no singular juncture at which the raw material instantaneously transmuted from an inert block into a masterpiece. It was, instead, an incremental unfolding, the divine likeness gradually manifesting from the timber through assiduous, reiterative toil. Occasionally, Daedalus would toil for hours only to excise a quantity of substance that could comfortably rest within the concavity of his palm. The meridian of the day would typically discover him partaking of a frugal repast. Unleavened bread, briny olives, perhaps a modest portion of curdled milk product, consumed not amidst the splendor of an opulent feast, but perched upon a rudimentary stool within his workshop, his intellect still grappling with the conundrum of fortifying a timber articulation or perfecting the curvilinear elegance in a segment of marble. On occasion, he would entirely neglect his sustenance, the provisions remaining untouched as he became utterly engrossed in resolving some minor engineering predicament. Mythological accounts recount that Daedalus pioneered the conception of numerous implements: the serrated saw, the formidable axe, the pointed gimlet, and a specialized boring apparatus. Yet these innovations did not materialize for him as sudden illuminations of genius. Rather, they crystallized from innumerable hours steeped in vexation, born from the persistent endeavor to surmount precise obstacles encountered within his quotidian professional activities. He might dedicate an entire afternoon to the arduous task of severing a piece of timber in a precise fashion, experiencing repeated setbacks until ultimately he would subtly recalibrate his methodology or his instrument to attain the coveted outcome. His nephew, Talos, evinced considerable aptitude as an artisan. One day, during a perambulation along the littoral expanse, the youthful individual discovered the maxillary bone of a serpent and was thereby impelled to fabricate a saw, replicating its dentition in metallic iron. When he presented his ingenious device to his paternal uncle, Daedalus did not react with instantaneous laudation or theatrical envy, as some legendary narratives purport. Instead, he scrutinized the implement in silence, assessing its cutting edge with his digit, experimenting with it upon a fragment of discarded timber, and subsequently returned it with a subtle inclination of his head, a gesture representing his most profound endorsement. The bond uniting Daedalus and Talos ultimately deteriorated, not through a singular climactic incident, but via a gradual accretion of minor frictions. As Talos's proficiency burgeoned, Daedalus invariably found himself devoting increased scrutiny to his nephew's endeavors, proffering amendments that were progressively superfluous. Their exchanges grew more concise, their periods of quietude extended and less agreeable. The most widely disseminated iteration of the myth recounts that Daedalus, consumed by an overwhelming envy, propelled Talos from the heights of the Acropolis to his demise. Yet perhaps the verity was more subdued, more prosaic. Conceivably, there was simply a profound estrangement, with acrimonious words exchanged within the confined confines of the workshop, culminating in Talos's departure to establish his own enterprise as a rival. The notion of death might have been symbolic, signifying the termination of a fellowship, rather than the cessation of a corporeal existence. Subsequent to his nephew's exodus, Daedalus's atelier became even more profoundly silent. He would engage in soliloquy as he labored, maintaining a continuous stream of technical insights and mnemonic prompts. This articulation requires greater compression. Recollect to permit this to desiccate thoroughly prior to applying the subsequent stratum. The relative dimensions are not entirely harmonious in this section. Casual callers might discern his presence audibly before visually perceiving him, his voice a gentle, almost indistinguishable murmur amidst the resonant clatter of his implements against timber or lithic material. When King Minos of Crete formally solicited his professional expertise, Daedalus did not commence his voyage with any ostentatious display or public acclamation. He meticulously enshrouded his specialized instruments in oil-soaked fabric to inhibit corrosion, uttered subdued valedictions to his neighbors who, despite years of proximate cohabitation, had scarcely known him intimately, and ascended a commercial vessel destined for Crete with the quiet acquiescence of an individual undertaking merely another commission. The maritime passage itself transpired without incident or notable event. Daedalus largely occupied his time seated upon the deck, observing the fluctuating chromatic spectrum of the ocean, or below, endeavoring to achieve repose despite the ship's ceaseless undulations. He might have sculpted diminutive wooden effigies to occupy the hours, not grand artistic achievements, but rather unpretentious forms designed to keep his hands engaged and his thoughts placid. Upon his disembarkation in Crete, he encountered King Minos, whom he perceived as an exacting patron, the archetype of an individual possessing scant comprehension of artisanal intricacies, yet harboring exceedingly precise preconceptions regarding his desired outcomes. The momentous directive for the construction of the labyrinth emerged subsequent to Daedalus's successful completion of several more modest undertakings for the royal residence. Ingenious automata crafted for the monarch's progeny, significant enhancements to the palace's hydraulic infrastructure, and ornate embellishments for sacral chambers. The labyrinth itself, that prodigious exemplar of primeval architectural prowess, was erected not in a sudden efflorescence of inventive brilliance, but rather through protracted months of systematic strategizing. Daedalus would dedicate entire diurnal periods to executing intricate computations upon tablets coated with wax, meticulously obliterating and recommencing them whenever the numerical parameters proved incongruent. He fashioned innumerable preliminary drawings and miniature prototypes, rigorously evaluating disparate arrangements of conduits and cul-de-sacs. The actual edifice required years for its realization, with Daedalus exercising oversight over cohorts of laborers who meticulously positioned stone upon stone in strict adherence to his precise directives. He was not an overbearing taskmaster, but an enervated overseer who frequently found himself reiterating identical principles on multiple occasions, who periodically had to rectify labor that had been inadequately performed, and who concluded each day thoroughly encrusted with lithic powder, too utterly fatigued to undertake more than a cursory ablution before succumbing to a profound, unburdened slumber. Throughout this extensive period, Daedalus's progeny, Icarus, underwent the transition from infancy to burgeoning adolescence. Their interrelationship was not characterized by a continuous stream of didactic opportunities or profound philosophical dialogues. On most days, they merely coexisted within shared environments, Daedalus being too profoundly engrossed in his professional endeavors to impart substantial paternal sagacity, while Icarus amused himself by observing the diligent workers or engaging with the intricate mechanical playthings his father had fabricated for the monarch's offspring. As one reclines and attends to the unfolding of this narrative, envision the labyrinth gradually assuming its final form, not through an instantaneous metamorphosis, but through the deliberate placement of each individual stone. Contemplate the subtle contentment Daedalus might have experienced, not upon its ultimate culmination, but during those infrequent junctures when an especially intricate segment coalesced precisely in alignment with his mental blueprint. These modest triumphs, rather than overarching accomplishments, constituted the authentic recompense for his artisanal dedication. Upon the ultimate consummation of the labyrinth, there was no ceremonial event, no formal inauguration. Minos merely arrived to conduct his inspection, offered a silent affirmation of his satisfaction, and proceeded to formulate strategies for its intended application. These very schemes would, in due course, precipitate Daedalus's incarceration, after he facilitated Theseus's successful traversal of the intricate maze to vanquish the formidable Minotaur. Having navigated the intricate labyrinth to confront and ultimately defeat the formidable Minotaur, the renowned flight, facilitated by ingeniously crafted waxen wings, transpired subsequent to a protracted period of silent confinement, during which Daedalus reverted to the elemental artistry of his skilled hands. He dedicated himself to meticulously fashioning, constructing, and devising exquisite, diminutive artifacts, not with the explicit purpose of securing his liberation, but rather because the very act of creation was inherent to his being, an intrinsic skill he possessed. The intricate aerial apparatus itself was painstakingly assembled across numerous weeks. Individual plumes were meticulously gathered, one or two at a time, to meticulously avoid inciting any undue suspicion, and raw beeswax was painstakingly liquefied in modest quantities, utilizing the subtle glow of nighttime candles. Upon contemplating the figure of Daedalus, a certain solace emerges from envisioning this legendary character, not as an extraordinary innovator or a sorrow-stricken parent, but rather as a weary artisan. His narrative serves as a poignant testament that the majority of significant accomplishments, even those grand enough to transcend into myth, are forged through diligent, frequently laborious effort, as opposed to sudden, electrifying bursts of genius. His hands, hardened and discolored by countless years of toil, articulate a more profound truth about human ingenuity than any fantastical account ever could. The serene steadfastness with which he tackled challenges, the systematic methodology applied to his trade, and the gradual mastery of expertise accrued over an entire existence. These elements constitute the genuine bedrock of inventive accomplishment, a principle as valid in the classical era of Athens as it remains in our contemporary world. As one's reflections meander through this understated recounting, an inclination might arise to ponder the dedicated artisans encountered in one's personal sphere, or the unassuming, unwavering endeavors that underpin so much that we hold dear. For our subsequent narrative, we shall delve into yet another frequently disregarded facet of Hellenic existence: the transformative influence of a modest arboreal entity upon the fate of an entire polis, a change wrought not by mystical interference, but rather through the measured, consistent bestowal of sustenance, oleaginous liquid, and sheltering canopy. We shall now proceed with our deliberate exploration of Greek mythology, directing our focus toward an element that, initially, might appear quite commonplace: a tree. However, this is no ordinary specimen, but rather the venerable olive tree, whose unobtrusive yet pervasive existence molded the city of Athens in manners significantly more deep-seated than many of the theatrical conflicts or governmental machinations frequently chronicled in historical texts. Many are familiar with the celebrated mythological account. In the nascent era of Athens, the divine entities Athena and Poseidon vied for the esteemed role of the city's patron deity. Poseidon, in a powerful gesture, struck the sacred Acropolis with his formidable trident, thereby manifesting a saline spring. Conversely, Athena, with a delicate touch upon the earth, caused the inaugural olive tree to sprout from that very spot. The populace, in their wisdom, selected Athena's benevolent offering, and consequently, the city adopted her revered appellation. Nevertheless, what these legendary narratives seldom elaborate upon, indeed, what their condensed forms rarely permit, is the gradual, nuanced manner in which this particular tree fundamentally altered the prosperity of an entire urban center across countless centuries. This profound metamorphosis occurred not through celestial interference, but rather through the steadfast and unassuming dispensation of its manifold blessings, its succulent fruit, its precious oil, its sturdy timber, and its welcoming shade. Envision a serene dawn during the early summer season in classical Athens, an epoch considerably predating the majestic erection of the Parthenon upon the Acropolis. the nascent sun has merely commenced its gentle embrace, imbuing the eastern gradients of the encircling hills with a burgeoning warmth. A diligent agriculturist ambles contemplatively amidst his olive groves, some arboreal members having been cultivated by his paternal ancestor, while others boast an even more venerable antiquity. These are not the grandiose, commanding specimens akin to the mighty oak or the stately cypress. They maintain a moderate stature, their venerable trunks frequently contorted and spiraled with the passage of time, their foliage a delicate silver-green hue that subtly oscillates and gleams with every tender zephyr. The cultivator proceeds with unhurried deliberation, scrutinizing each individual tree with the meticulous discernment characteristic of one whose very sustenance is predicated upon deciphering nuanced transformations. He carefully observes which particular trees are demonstrating a prolific yield this annum, and which appear to be undergoing a period of dormancy. His gaze meticulously searches for indications of blight or any detrimental effects wrought by the harshness of winter tempests. There is no imperative for haste in this thorough examination. Olive trees, indeed, adhere to a temporal rhythm distinct from that of human beings, with certain specimens enduring for multiple centuries, or even millennia. In close proximity, his spouse and progeny are engaged in collecting discarded boughs, destined for the culinary hearth. Olive timber ignites with a measured pace, emitting minimal effluvium and imparting a delightful aroma to the air. This represents merely one among a multitude of minor boons bestowed by the tree, frequently disregarded within more expansive historical accounts. While diligently occupied, their conversation flows gently, touching upon commonplace subjects: a recent birth in a neighboring household, anticipatory arrangements for the impending civic celebration, or a particular bread formulation requiring further refinement. Their subdued vocalizations intermingle harmoniously with the delicate murmur of the foliage and the remote chirps of avian life. Within the urban expanse itself, the pervasive impact of the olive is similarly widespread, yet equally understated. Within an unpretentious dwelling situated proximate to the agora, a matriarch awakens prior to her household to commence the preparations for the forthcoming day. She kindles a diminutive terracotta lamp, replete with olive oil. The resultant flame is minute, providing precisely enough illumination for her to navigate the chamber without disturbing the slumber of the other occupants. This unadorned ritual, transmuting gloom into luminosity, recurs in myriad residences throughout Athens each dawn and dusk, a quotidian marvel rendered feasible by the humble olive. Subsequently, she will employ olive oil for culinary purposes, for assuaging superficial abrasions, and for hydrating epidermal tissue desiccated by the intensity of the sun and the chill of the wind. She will cleanse the household's woolen garments by meticulously addressing blemishes with a concoction of olive oil blended with fuller's earth. These are not the deeds that find their way into grand epic verses or onto exquisitely adorned ceramics. Yet they constitute the subtle yet essential tableau against which every other dimension of Athenian existence gradually unfurls. Within an artisan's atelier situated near the periphery of the urban center, an aged ceramist makes ready to apply a vitrifying coating to his most recent artistic endeavors. The earthen receptacles and amphorae, meticulously fashioned specifically for the containment of olive oil, are arranged in orderly files, awaiting their final treatment. He possesses the understanding that these vessels will journey extensively beyond the confines of Athens, conveying not merely the oil itself, but also the esteemed renown of his city to remote maritime destinations. Merchants hailing from Egypt hold Attic oil in high regard for its superior excellence. Traders from the Pontic region enthusiastically barter cereal grains for the lustrous amber fluid. Devoid of ostentatious pronouncements or extensive military expeditions, the unassuming olive tree intricately links Athens to an expansive mercantile infrastructure. The ceramist executes his tasks with systematic diligence, his motions tempered by the advance of years, yet imbued with an unwavering precision honed by countless decades of practical application. As he meticulously coats his creations with glaze, he softly vocalizes a melody imparted to him by his paternal grandfather, a traditional working chant pertaining to the olive gathering, a tune of an antiquity surpassing living memory. The composition lacks any theatrical climaxes or intricate polyphonic arrangements, featuring instead a soothing, reiterative tune that harmonizes perfectly with the rhythmic actions of hands plucking fruit or feet crushing the olives for their precious oil. In another quarter of the metropolis, within the domicile of a medical practitioner, an individual contends with a tenacious cough. The physician, not a prodigious miracle worker drawn from legendary tales, but rather a pragmatic therapeutic expert possessing wisdom transmitted across successive generations, meticulously concocts a curative preparation comprising olive oil imbued with various botanicals. He elucidates to his ailing charge that the oleaginous liquid will ameliorate the pharyngeal discomfort and effectively convey the salutary attributes of the herbal components. This body of knowledge is neither sensational nor mystical. It represents the understated aggregation of empirical observations diligently amassed by innumerable healers over the course of centuries. As the meridian draws nigh and the solar luminescence intensifies, individuals instinctively gravitate towards the sanctuary offered by the canopy of olive trees strategically situated throughout the urban landscape. In stark contrast to the meticulously designed horticultural spaces of subsequent epochs, these venerable trees fulfilled pragmatic functions, providing welcome shade, yielding their nourishing fruit, and demarcating territorial boundaries between adjacent holdings. Nestled beneath the branches of one such arboreal sentinel, two venerable gentlemen occupy a rudimentary stone seating arrangement, engaging in a game of pentagrammai upon a diagram etched directly into the earth. Their rendezvous at this precise location has spanned numerous years, their enduring camaraderie nurtured through innumerable contests conducted within the variegated illumination filtering through the olive foliage. Their discourse ambles leisurely, akin to a placid waterway, encompassing topics such as meteorological conditions, corporeal discomforts, and the most recent pronouncement from the Civic Assembly. Frequent intermissions punctuate their exchanges as they ponder their next strategic maneuver, or simply savor the agreeable quietude shared between individuals who have long transcended the necessity for incessant verbal communication. Surrounding them, the city proceeds with its quotidian affairs, vendors proclaiming their commodities, youngsters at play, and artisans diligently engaged in their vocations. Yet, within this verdant sanctuary provided by the olive, the passage of time appears to decelerate perceptibly. The authentic fiscal significance of the olive to Athens becomes unequivocally apparent when one contemplates the venerable Panathenaic Games, a quadrennial celebration instituted to venerate the goddess Athena. The esteemed accolades bestowed upon the triumphant competitors comprised amphorae brimming with olive oil, not merely any oleaginous liquid, but specifically oil derived from the hallowed trees reputedly descended from Athena's primordial endowment. These distinctive arboreal specimens flourished within designated groves, situated beyond the city's boundaries, meticulously overseen by functionaries expressly mandated for this solemn duty. Envision the understated commitment of these custodians, whose diligent efforts seldom garnered public attention unless an unfortunate incident transpired. With unwavering consistency, day succeeding day, and season following season, they undertook pruning, provided irrigation during periods of aridity, and vigilantly inspected for parasitic infestations, all with the singular objective of preserving the robust vitality of these consecrated trees. Their rapport with the venerable trees was characterized by a profound intimacy, albeit devoid of sentimental romanticism. They comprehended the distinct requirements of each individual tree, meticulously documenting its peculiar characteristics and inherent proclivities, exulting in its periods of profuse yield and assiduously tending to it during less fruitful seasons. The oleaginous essence extracted from these trees possessed not merely symbolic worth, it constituted substantial, tangible affluence. A victorious athlete might be awarded an amphora containing oil whose market value approximated the cumulative earnings of an ordinary laborer over several years. This particular prize was neither ostentatious nor theatrical. It entailed no gilded laurel circlets or lustrous panoplies. Yet its utilitarian worth was immeasurable. Triumphant competitors had the option to commercialize the oil, apply it for their domestic requirements, or exchange it for diverse commodities. The pervasive influence of the olive transcended mere economic considerations, permeating the realms of legal statutes and societal frameworks. The retribution for inflicting harm upon an olive tree, especially one deemed sacred, was draconian, potentially culminating in capital punishment during the most archaic epochs. This stringent measure was not indicative of an inherently cruel disposition among the Athenians, but rather stemmed from their profound comprehension of the indispensable role these incrementally developing trees played in sustaining their communal prosperity. The profound significance of arboreal resources, particularly the olive tree, to the communal prosperity and societal well-being of the ancient Athenians, formed an indispensable cornerstone of their civilization. Athenian civic identity was occasionally articulated through the evocative symbolism of the olive tree. Much like an olive sapling, even if uprooted and relocated to foreign soil, would steadfastly preserve its inherent characteristics and fundamental essence. An individual born into Athenian society invariably retained their intrinsic Athenian identity, irrespective of their geographical displacement. Furthermore, paralleling the olive's protracted maturation period before it yielded its bountiful harvest, the intricate cultivation and comprehensive development of a responsible and contributing citizen similarly demanded considerable forbearance, diligent instruction, and meticulous nurturing over an extended duration. Arguably, the most far-reaching influence the olive exerted upon the nascent city-state of Athens stemmed from its straightforward yet crucial offering of consistent plenitude. In stark contrast to cereal crops, which were highly susceptible to total devastation during periods of protracted aridity and drought, olive groves consistently yielded their produce with dependable regularity, even if the harvest was not invariably prodigious. This inherent steadfastness in production, established a vital safeguard against widespread starvation and scarcity, thereby fostering an environment of sufficient societal equilibrium that permitted the flourishing of intellectual inquiry, the burgeoning of theatrical arts, and the evolution of a sophisticated democratic system of governance. One might ponder the vastly altered trajectory Athens would have assumed had it been deprived of this unobtrusive yet perpetual commodity. Absent the illuminating properties of olive oil for lamps, the vibrant intellectual discourse and scholarly pursuits would have been rigorously confined to the diurnal cycle, lacking the lucrative revenue generated by olive exports. The financial resources indispensable for the construction of monumental public edifices and the elaborate staging of civic festivals might well have remained an unrealized aspiration. Furthermore, without the pervasive canopy of shade offered by the ubiquitous olive groves, the characteristic outdoor dialogues and peripatetic deliberations that defined Athenian philosophical inquiry would almost certainly have adopted a fundamentally distinct configuration. As dusk begins to settle upon our envisioned day, familial units convene for their principal repast at dining surfaces dispersed throughout the bustling metropolis. Within modest earthenware vessels, the lustrous olive oil gleams, poised to accompany freshly baked bread for dipping. The oil harvested from disparate groves exhibits nuanced distinctions in its gustatory profile, some possessing a piquant, peppery zest, others a velvety smoothness, and still others a delicate whisper of verdant, grassy notes. Such subtle Epicurean variations were keenly discerned and valued by the Athenians, yet these granular details seldom find mention within the sweeping chronicles of historical accounts. Following the evening meal, as the cloak of night descends, the identical oil lamps that had initiated the day's activities are rekindled. Within their soft, ambient glow, parents engage in the narration of children's tales. Skilled artisans diligently persist in their intricate crafts, and meticulous scribes meticulously document commercial dealings, or painstakingly transcribe profound philosophical treatises. The enduring theatrical masterpieces we recall from the annals of ancient Athens, the compelling works of Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes, were composed and frequently perused under the very same unassuming illumination. Thus, the day concludes precisely as it commenced, with the olive's unassuming benefactions underpinning the very fabric of urban existence. There are no dramatic pronouncements of divine wrath or monstrous oceanic beasts, no epic odysseys or calamitous demises, merely the steadfast, unfailing presence of a tree that generously bestows its fruit, its precious oil, its timber, and its comforting shade, requiring remarkably little in recompense. As one reclines and perhaps succumbs to the gentle embrace of slumber, it is pertinent to contemplate the frequency with which humanity's most celebrated accomplishments are underpinned by such unassuming and fundamental bedrock. The momentous events indelibly etched in our collective memory, the tumultuous skirmishes, the stirring political orations, the transcendent artistic creations, were, in essence, rendered feasible by an innumerable multitude of quiet, ordinary acts of diligent cultivation and meticulous stewardship, meticulously reiterated day after day through successive generations. In the ensuing narrative, the focus will shift to an additional, often disregarded facet of ancient Hellenic existence: the influential women of Delphi, whose subtly conveyed pronouncements profoundly influenced the choices of both sovereign rulers and ordinary citizens. Their impact derived not from any purported supernatural endowments, but rather from their acute powers of observation and a profound comprehension of intrinsic human behaviors and motivations. The verdant olive groves through which the previous contemplation meandered now recede, giving way to an altogether distinct topography. A precipitous mountain trail ascending sinuously towards Delphi, the revered sanctuary of Apollo, and the abode of antiquity's most renowned prophetic utterance. However, for this evening's discourse, the emphasis will not rest upon the sensational pronouncements or the magnificent temple housing its resplendent effigy of Apollo. Instead, the narrative will pivot to the women whose unobtrusive endeavors rendered the oracle's function viable, encompassing not merely the Pythia herself, but also the numerous other individuals whose contributions have been effaced from the annals of recorded history. Envision a crisp, cool spring dawn breaking over Delphi. The solar orb has not yet crested the majestic peak of Mount Parnassus, leaving the sacred precinct cloaked in profound azure shadows. The majority of transient visitors remain submerged in slumber within the hostelries of the settlement nestled below. Yet the dedicated women in service to the temple have been roused for several hours already. They navigate the hallowed grounds with hushed movements, meticulously preparing for the unfolding day with the composed efficacy characteristic of individuals who have executed these identical duties innumerable times in the past. Among this diligent assembly is Cleopia, an elder matriarch who has resided at Delphi for a span exceeding 3 decades. Her tenure commenced as a youthful acolyte, and she now supervises the multifaceted domestic operations of the venerable sanctuary. While she is not the Pythia, the renowned priestess charged with conveying Apollo's divine pronouncements, her function is unequivocally indispensable. On this particular morning, mirroring every preceding dawn, she meticulously verifies that pristine water has been drawn from the sacred Castalian spring for the requisite purification rites, that the temple's hallowed floors have been thoroughly swept, and that the perpetual flame within Apollo's innermost sanctum continues to flicker with unwavering constancy. Cleopia's hands bear the indelible imprints of decades of toil, not the valorous exertions typically ascribed to epic heroes, but rather the sustained, cyclical duties fundamental to the upkeep of consecrated domains. Her digits, subtly crooked by the nascent stages of arthritis, delicately arrange the pleats of a ritualistic fabric, meticulously smooth a crease from an altar's drape, and gently compress the wick of an oil lamp to ensure a more uniform combustion. Every gesture is precisely executed, undertaken with an understated attentiveness that in itself constitutes a form of profound veneration. In close proximity, a younger woman by the name of Theodora diligently pulverizes barley, destined for the preparation of sacrificial cakes to be presented to Apollo. The compact handmill emits a gentle, rhythmic cadence, stone abrading against stone, as the raw grain progressively transmutes into fine flour. She refrains from expediting the procedure. The intrinsic quality of the votive offering is paramount, and any undue haste would be perceived as an affront, both to the grain itself and to the divine recipient. While engaged in her laborious activity, she vocalizes a soft, melodic hum, not a prescribed liturgical chant, but rather a practical working melody transmitted through generations from the instructress who imparted this particular craft to her many years prior. These women are by no means sequestered from the broader human experience, notwithstanding their domicile within the sacred precinct. They are privy to an expansive spectrum of information, intimate disclosures murmured by supplicants seeking counsel, animated political deliberations between emissaries from diverse city-states, and the exchange of tidings from distant maritime trade hubs among merchants. They assimilate this data not with the calculating scrutiny of covert operatives, but with the inherent perceptiveness of individuals whose daily tasks render them simultaneously conspicuous and yet frequently disregarded. When monarchs and military commanders arrive to solicit the oracle's wisdom, their gaze typically encompasses the venerated priestess, the officiating male clergy, and the awe-inspiring architectural grandeur, but seldom registers the presence of the woman who provided their lustral water, or who meticulously swept the pathway they traversed. Nevertheless, these very same unheralded women frequently possess the most perspicacious insight into the actual dynamics at play within Delphi, an understanding meticulously accrued through years of understated, diligent scrutiny. By the advent of mid-morning, a steady stream of visitors commences their ingress into the sanctuary. On this particular day, a distinguished delegation from Corinth is present, comprising affluent mercantile figures desirous of counsel regarding a prospective new commercial thoroughfare. They present an array of remarkable votive gifts: a substantial bronze tripod, multiple amphorae filled with exquisite oil, and a diminutive coffer almost certainly containing precious gold. Their reception is orchestrated by the temple's authorized representatives, men adorned in elaborate ceremonial vestments, who receive the offerings with an appropriate degree of gravitas and decorum. Stationed behind these male officials are several temple acolytes, among whom is a woman named Philomena, whose dedicated service at Delphi spans almost 2 decades. Her designated official capacity is unassuming. She aids in the preparatory rituals for the Pythia's trance induction and assists in the meticulous upkeep of the temple's inventories. However, her grasp of the oracle's intricate operational mechanisms extends considerably beyond the general perception. Philomena's discerning gaze registers every minutiae pertaining to the Corinthian delegation: the superior craftsmanship of their attire, the manner in which they converse amongst themselves when presuming discretion, and the faint undercurrents of discord suggesting internal disagreements concerning the very enterprise about which they seek divine guidance. She requires no supernatural revelation to interpret these telltale indicators. Merely the accumulated wisdom of observing countless analogous groups arrive and depart over decades, their subsequent destinies frequently recounted by successive pilgrims. As the diurnal cycle advances, Philomena and her female counterparts persevere in their various duties throughout the sacred precinct. They replenish the oil in lamps, meticulously position votive offerings on lesser altars, and meticulously prepare sustenance for the resident priests and priestesses. Their motions are attuned to the celestial progression of the sun across the firmament, characterized by an unhurried yet impeccably synchronized precision. The oracle conducts its pronouncements exclusively on specific days within each lunar cycle, necessitating that all requisite preparations be finalized in anticipation of those designated occasions. The incumbent Pythia bears the appellation Aristone, a woman originating from a reputable lineage, who arrived at Delphi in her 4th decade subsequent to being widowed. Presently in her 50th year, she has functioned as the vocal conduit for Apollo for approximately 15 years. The prevalent popular conception of the Pythia frequently depicts a youthful female propelled into frenzied ecstasy, yet the historical actuality generally diverged. The majority were mature women selected for their inherent gravitas and unimpeachable moral standing. On days not designated for oracular pronouncements, such as the present one, Aristone actively engages in the quotidian routines of the sanctuary. This very afternoon observes her seated within a secluded garden, accompanied by several temple attendants, including youthful women currently assimilating the intricate customs of Delphi. They are all occupied with the task of spinning wool, an ubiquitous domestic chore shared by women throughout Greece, irrespective of their social standing, from regal personages to enslaved individuals, whilst Aristone imparts her extensive erudition concerning the sanctuary's storied past. Her vocal delivery is hushed and deliberately paced as she elucidates the evolutionary trajectory of specific rituals, the appropriate protocols for managing particular votive presentations, and the discernment of indicators that might signify Apollo's dissatisfaction. This pedagogical approach is devoid of dramatic mystical elements, constituting instead a pragmatic form of instruction, imparted with the profound patience of an individual who comprehends that the perpetuation of venerable traditions necessitates meticulous attention to an innumerable array of minute particulars. Among the assembled audience is a young maiden, perhaps 14 years of age, known as Timandra. She arrived at Delphi as an orphan and has since been nurtured within the sacred precinct, dedicating her life to its service. Timandra absorbs the instructions with profound focus, interjecting occasionally with queries that betray an exceptionally keen intellect and a thirst for deeper understanding. The elder priestesses, observing her, share knowing looks. For a considerable period, they have been closely monitoring Timandra, noting her meticulous observance of ritualistic intricacies and her innate grasp of the pilgrim's varied requirements. They ponder the possibility that her disposition could, in time, qualify her to assume a more direct sacred role, perhaps even serving as an oracle herself. As twilight descends, the hallowed sanctuary assumes a transformed ambiance. The throngs of day visitors commence their descent to the lower settlement, leaving in their wake a more tranquil environment where the resident women and men can finally address their personal affairs and find respite. Within a modest edifice situated close to the temple kitchen, several of the seasoned custodians convene to partake in an unadorned repast and engage in a deliberate sharing of the insights gleaned throughout the day. Their discourse is far from idle chatter or frivolous gossip. Rather, it constitutes a thoughtful exchange of crucial information designed to enhance their collective service to the sacred site. They meticulously analyze which pilgrims appeared sincerely devout and which merely performed rituals superficially, discerning which votive offerings might necessitate particular attention, and identifying any geopolitical undercurrents that could potentially influence subsequent pronouncements from the oracle. Cleopia, a venerable attendant, observes that the head envoy of the Corinthian delegation appeared visibly agitated throughout his visit, frequently fidgeting with his attire and projecting his voice excessively, betraying an underlying unease. She remarks, while tearing a morsel from her loaf of bread, that he had posed numerous inquiries regarding prior divinations concerning commercial ventures. However, he seemed notably dissatisfied with their inherent lack of definitive clarity, indicating a desire for more direct and unambiguous answers than the sacred tradition typically provided. Philomena concurs with a thoughtful nod. I caught snippets of a heated discussion he was having with the junior member of their party, she adds, her voice low. Evidently, they have already invested substantial capital and considerable effort into this particular venture. It appears they are not truly soliciting counsel for an uncertain path, but rather seeking sacred endorsement for a predetermined course of action. This astute observation will undoubtedly be relayed to Aristone, the Pythia, before the subsequent day of prophecy. It will not be presented as a directive or an attempt to influence her divine pronouncements, but rather as crucial background information, providing invaluable context that might help her discern the underlying intent and the true question beneath the formal petition presented by the delegation. The Pythia's renowned enigmatic pronouncements were far from arbitrary. Instead, they evinced a profound comprehension of human nature and the intricate impulses that compelled individuals to solicit divine guidance. As night fully envelops the sacred landscape, flickering oil lamps begin to illuminate the entire sanctuary. In her personal quarters, Aristone, the current Pythia, sits in quiet solitude, perusing archived accounts of past divine utterances, particularly those related to commercial and seafaring enterprises. This diligent study is not undertaken because she will consciously or deliberately employ this information when positioned upon the sacred tripod above the enigmatic fissure, for she veritably enters a transcendent condition that she unequivocally ascribes to the indwelling spirit of Apollo. Rather, she believes that cultivating such mental readiness is a profound act of reverence, demonstrating respect to both the presiding god and to those who journey to Delphi to solicit his sagacity. Meanwhile, within a modest sleeping quarters, the junior acolytes of the sanctuary make ready for slumber. Timandra, ever diligent, rests upon her humble mattress, carefully mending a rent in her woolen himation, her work illuminated by the faint glow of a modest oil lamp. Surrounding her, other girls and women engage in their nocturnal rituals, some meticulously tending to their tresses, others exchanging hushed words in quiet conversations, and many murmuring humble invocations to diverse deities, seeking blessings for peaceful slumber or the alleviation of trivial complaints that might trouble them. These, then, are the veritable women of Delphi, not enigmatic visionaries attired in arcane raiment, as subsequent artistic representations would often portray them, but rather unassuming individuals profoundly engaged in the intricate undertaking of upholding a sacred precinct and diligently serving as vital conduits between the mortal realm and the divine. Their considerable influence stemmed less primarily from episodes of supernatural enthrallment or ecstatic divine possession, and more fundamentally from their strategic vantage point at the confluence of accumulated knowledge, established customs, and the intricate workings of the human psyche. They possessed a profound sagacity, enabling them to discern the essential truths pilgrims truly required to hear, which often diverged significantly from their desired affirmations or anticipated certainties. Furthermore, they astutely perceived that the true merit and lasting impact occasionally resided not in the precise content of a prophetic utterance, but rather in the profound, ritualistic journey of soliciting counsel itself. The very act of verbalizing anxieties and aspirations within a sanctified environment, deliberately detached from the clamor of everyday concerns. As one pauses and attends to this narrative unfolding softly, perhaps there is an inclination to reflect upon the enduring sagacity of these overlooked priestesses, their unwavering meticulousness in every task, their profound grasp of the human condition, and their crucial realization that genuine enlightenment frequently stems not from sudden, grand disclosures or dramatic revelation. Instead, it emerges from diligent scrutiny and judicious deciphering of recurring phenomena, patterns that remain discernible exclusively to those who dedicate themselves to genuine, patient perception, taking the necessary time to truly see beyond the superficial. In our subsequent narrative, we shall shift our focus to a different unheralded collective, the dedicated attendants responsible for the quotidian existence on Mount Olympus. Their presence served as a profound demonstration that even the most exalted deities required sustenance and care beyond their own procurement, and that the most formidable celestial beings remained utterly dependent upon the unassuming, indispensable labors required for ensuring the seamless operation and efficient functioning of a magnificent celestial abode. As we persist in our unhurried exploration through the unregarded facets of Greek mythology, let us now direct our contemplation toward the majestic Mount Olympus. Our focus shifts not to the grand audience chamber where the gods convened to issue cosmic decrees that reshaped existence, but rather to the serene corridors, the bustling culinary spaces, and the verdant horticultural expanses where myriad deathless retainers assiduously sustained the elaborate celestial establishment. For even within the realm of myth, it becomes evident that eminence necessitates assistance, and the most formidable authority mandates meticulous upkeep. Envision the first rays of dawn illuminating the oriental inclines of Olympus. While the principal deities may yet repose within their sumptuous abodes, the sacred peak already hums with a subdued industriousness. A multitude of deathless attendants, graceful nymphs, lesser divinities, and myriad entities inhabiting the liminal realms betwixt the divine and the mortal, traverse corridors adorned with polished marble and resplendent gold. Each moves with purpose, diligently making ready for the inexorable progression of another day in everlasting existence, ensuring the celestial household functions flawlessly. Within this bustling throng is Aglaia, a youthful dryad whose foremost charge is managing the private chambers of Zeus. She glides through the opulent space with the meticulous exactitude of one who has assimilated the precise preferences of the sovereign of deities concerning his personal environment. The colossal slumbering couch, adorned with linens spun from ethereal vapor, must be positioned with exacting care. Not excessively regimented, for Zeus genuinely enjoys a certain agreeable disorder, yet never genuinely untidy. Her delicate hands caress away imperceptible creases from plush pillows. She drapes the hangings to permit the optimal ingress of illumination, and meticulously polishes the vast array of offerings and homage that Zeus has amassed across millennia. Each singular item possesses a narrative that Aglaia recalls intimately. Though Zeus himself has lost recollection of numerous provenances, she regards even the most diminutive artifact with veneration, not from trepidation, but from a profound comprehension that eternal existence entails an incessant accrual of significant possessions, each holding its own silent history. In another quarter of the celestial peak, within culinary domains capacious enough to orchestrate banquets for the complete divine assembly, a venerable divinity by the name of Euphrosyne presides over the creation of ambrosial delicacies and nectarian libations. Though frequently characterized merely as celestial sustenance, ambrosia is far from a singular comestible. It represents an intricate gastronomic art, boasting diverse permutations meticulously designed to cater to varied immortal tastes. Euphrosyne has been concocting these sacred repasts since an epoch predating the birth of numerous present-day Olympians. Her actions are measured yet flawlessly effective, every motion honed by countless ages of experience. Beneath her authoritative guidance, scores of minor, deathless beings engage in diverse duties, collecting exotic components from every earthly dominion, cultivating constituents requiring decades of maturation before integration, and attending to perpetual hearth fires that must perpetually glow without faltering. The vast culinary domain functions in a convivial near hush, with only infrequent gentle directives or inquiries punctuating the serene cadence of their work. These immortals have been executing identical duties in concert for countless epochs. Consequently, they foresee one another's requirements with the fluid grace of performers whose intricate movements have been indelibly etched into their collective memory. With an air of profound discernment, Euphrosyne samples a simmering concoction that has been concentrating its essence for a span equivalent to multiple mortal lifespans. She ponders its complex flavor profile with deep deliberation, her brow furrowed in concentration, before finally introducing a solitary bead of exquisite nectarian liquid from a diminutive phial suspended from her girdle. The minuteness of this alteration, a whisper of flavor, would be utterly undetectable by human perception. Yet, for the divine palate, it is precisely this imperceptible refinement that differentiates between celestial flawlessness and mere superior quality, elevating the dish to a state of absolute perfection. Outside the immediate confines of the Grand Palace, within the renowned horticultural expanses of Mount Olympus, a sylvan spirit known as Philoxenus meticulously cultivates botanical specimens unique to all existence. Some unfurl blossoms whose hues shift in response to the emotions of those who view them, offering a living tapestry of sentiment. Others yield fruits capable of bestowing particular felicitous visions when thoughtfully placed beneath a pillow. A select few, maintained within a sequestered enclosure shielded by diaphanous crystalline barriers, are both perilous yet exquisitely lovely, and indispensable for specific celestial balms or metamorphoses. Philoxenus, contrary to the typical portrayal of his lineage, is devoid of the untamed disposition commonly linked to satyrs. Eons of nurturing celestial vegetation have rendered him systematic, forbearing, and exquisitely observant of subtle shifts in soil composition and light intensity. He murmurs gently to the flora as he works, not out of conviction that they comprehend his utterances, but because after such an immeasurable span in their company, quietude seems somehow discourteous. His current apprentice is a youthful naiad named Cleo, recently transferred to the horticultural domain after having ministered for numerous decades within the ablutionary halls. She observes with rapt attention as Philoxenus illustrates the delicate art of how to prune an exceptionally capricious creeper, one that yields the clusters for a vintage solely designated for divine nuptials. The incision, he explains, demands execution at the precise instant the creeper's intrinsic luminescence emanates a cerulean viridian throb, a synchronization necessitating both acute focus and profound forbearance. There is no urgency, Philoxenus tells her, his tone as soft as the zephyr moving through the garden. This specimen has flourished for 700 years. It can assuredly await a few additional minutes for the optimal juncture to achieve its perfection. Minutes for the perfect moment. As the morning light matures into the full brilliance of midday, A palpable surge of energy animates the hallowed precincts of Olympus. The pantheon's principal deities are on the cusp of stirring, each possessing their own distinct habits and intricate demands. Within the serene confines of Athena's private chambers, a select company of owls, not mere avians, but lesser immortals who have embraced this sagacious form, meticulously arrange ancient scrolls and writing implements. Their task is executed with the scrupulous diligence of devoted archivists, ensuring that every parchment and stylus is positioned precisely where the goddess of wisdom expects it to be found when she commences her daily intellectual pursuits. Across the palace, in the exquisitely appointed suite of Aphrodite, a radiant retinue of graces prepares for the goddess's elegant awakening. They carefully lay out her array of cosmetics and precious jewelry, gently warm fragrant oils for her impending bath, and thoughtfully select from a vast wardrobe, guided by their intimate knowledge of her prevailing preferences and scheduled engagements. Their intricate duties demand not merely an eye for physical objects, but also a profound sensitivity to the subtle emotional currents of the day, discerning which hues might best complement Aphrodite's present mood and which aromatic essences would enhance, rather than overpower, her inherent divine fragrance. Even Ares, the formidable god of war, relies upon the discreet and unwavering support of his dedicated servants. Deep within his formidable armory, two brothers, immortals born from the rare union of a minor river god and a graceful mountain nymph, labor silently to burnish his extensive collection of weapons and formidable armor. They work in a congenial quietude, their hands possessing an innate understanding of how to treat each distinct material: the gleam of bronze, the stern strength of iron, the suppleness of leather, and the arcane properties of exotic substances whose names transcend mortal lexicon. Astos, the elder of the two, has maintained Ares's formidable equipment for such an extended duration that he can perceive minute imbalances imperceptible to any other being. He executes tiny, precise adjustments to a spear's weight distribution, applies specialized emollients to preserve the leather's pliability, yet robust strength, and tests the razor-sharp edge of a sword against his own immortal skin, not with sufficient force to inflict injury, but merely enough to verify its unyielding keenness. Throughout the sprawling celestial palace, similar scenes of dedicated service seamlessly unfold. Hermes' swift messengers diligently sorting dispatches that arrive from the farthest reaches of the cosmos. Poseidon's expert attendants meticulously preparing his magnificent chariot, paying particular attention to the intricate mechanisms that facilitate its fluid transition between the depths of the sea and the expanse of the land. Demeter's helpful spirits gathering pristine samples of every novel plant variety cultivated by human hands for her divine inspection and potential sanctification. By the early hours of the afternoon, the principal deities have fully embarked upon their day's myriad activities. Some choose to remain within the luminous halls of Olympus for weighty councils or personal avocations. Others journey forth to their respective domains or to engage with their interests in the mortal world. In either scenario, the ceaseless endeavor of sustaining divine existence persists without even a momentary pause. In an immense hall where the vaulted ceilings appear to ascend into the very clouds themselves, a group of muses, not the celebrated 9 traditionally associated with the arts and sciences, but their numerous sisters of lesser renown, rehearse the intricate music destined to accompany the evening repast. Their diverse array of instruments includes some familiar to human experience, alongside others that produce sonorities utterly impossible within the earthly realm. Their esteemed leader, Thea, has been composing celestial music for divine occasions since an epoch predating humanity's acquisition of articulate speech. She possesses a profound understanding of the complex harmonies that resonate pleasingly with immortal ears and the subtle melodic variations capable of swaying divine temperaments. Today, she is meticulously crafting a new arrangement, specifically tailored to mollify the lingering tensions between Apollo and Artemis, who had experienced a minor disagreement during the previous day's hunt. While the Muses diligently practice their celestial compositions, a bustling host of servants meticulously prepares the grand dining hall. Tables and luxurious couches are arranged with exquisite precision, their placement dictated by the prevailing divine hierarchy and the intricate web of current relationships, a complex layout that subtly evolves over time as alliances shift and divine favor ebbs and flows. This seating arrangement is, in itself, an intricate diplomatic art, designed to ensure that adversaries are not seated in uncomfortably close proximity, while simultaneously honoring the esteemed status of each individual deity. The immortal entrusted with this delicate task is Eunomia, who has overseen divine dining logistics since the ancient reign of the Titans. He works primarily from an encyclopedic memory, which he constantly refines through regular discreet conversations with those who attend the gods most intimately, and are therefore privy to recent shifts in celestial affiliations. Each place setting is thoughtfully personalized. Poseidon's ornate drinking vessel is perpetually brimming with crystalline water drawn from a specific underwater spring. Artemis is provided with plush cushions stuffed with fragrant herbs that evoke the wild essence of the forest. And Zeus is strategically positioned to command a view of the entire illustrious gathering, while himself remaining subtly elevated above the assembly. As the golden light of evening begins to descend, the tempo of preparation noticeably quickens. From the bustling kitchens, the first delectable courses are dispatched. Servers assume their precise positions, guided by a system of venerable and well-established protocols. Wine-bearers meticulously prepare special blends, each crafted to appeal to a particular divine palate. When the gods finally assemble and enter the magnificent space, it is so flawlessly prepared that they rarely perceive the immense effort involved, which is, indeed, the ultimate objective. The evening feast unfolds with an appearance of effortless grace and spontaneity, an illusion that paradoxically demands the most scrupulous planning and flawless execution. As the deities engage in profound debates on cosmic matters or immerse themselves in immortal entertainments, hundreds of vigilant servants anticipate every need, resolve nascent problems before they can escalate, and ceaselessly maintain the environment of absolute comfort that divinity has, by now, come to expect. And after the sumptuous feast has concluded, when the gods withdraw to their private chambers or depart for their nocturnal activities, another dedicated shift of immortal workers commences the meticulous process of restoration. The grand dining hall is returned to its pristine, perfect order. Any damaged items for divine tempers do, on occasion, flare with celestial intensity, are promptly repaired or replaced. Simultaneously, preparations for the following day's elaborate meals quietly begin. In Zeus's majestic chambers, Aglaia returns to delicately turn down the ethereal cloud sheets and make final, subtle adjustments to the room's serene ambience. She carefully places a specific dream-inducing flower, cultivated in Philoxenus's famed garden, in a small vase near the bed, adjusts the eternal flame to cast precisely the right level of soft light, and ensures that a compilation of the day's most pressing mortal prayers is thoughtfully positioned on a small table where Zeus will readily see it upon his awakening. Her work, much like that of all Olympus's tireless servants, resides gracefully in the nuanced space between sheer necessity and exquisite art. While the gods could, theoretically, maintain their own living spaces and prepare their own sustenance, the unparalleled perfection they have grown to anticipate, the seamless and effortless experience of divinity itself, fundamentally depends upon these countless, minute acts of diligent attention and devoted care, performed by those whose names seldom grace the grand narratives of myth. As night fully embraces the majestic mountain, even a great many of the immortal servants find respite. Some gather in their own unassuming quarters to share experiences, exchange anecdotes, or simply enjoy each other's congenial company. Others pursue their personal avocations, perhaps tending to a small private garden of their own, or composing verses that will forever remain unheard by mortal ears. A select few, like the cheerful Euphrosyne in her bustling kitchen, continue their labors through the quiet hours, diligently preparing elements that demand particular nighttime conditions, or simply savoring the profound peace that pervades the sleeping palace. As one reposes and attends to this gentle telling, perhaps there is an inclination to reflect upon the often overlooked supporters within one's own world, those whose quiet, consistent work lays the essential groundwork for the more conspicuous achievements of others. Or perhaps one simply appreciates this poignant reminder that even within the grand, ethereal realm of myth, true greatness seldom flourishes in complete isolation. In our subsequent narrative, we shall delve into the reasons why the militaristic city-state of Sparta deliberately chose to remain unwalled, and how this apparent vulnerability ultimately transformed into a profound source of both security and pride for one of ancient Greece's most formidable powers. We shall now proceed with our unhurried exploration through the captivating tapestry of ancient Greece, directing our attention towards one of its most renowned city-states, Sparta. While the majority of Greek cities conscientiously protected themselves with formidable stone fortifications, Athens, for instance, famously connected to its port by the celebrated Long Walls, Thebes encircled by colossal bulwarks, and Mycenae encompassed by structures so monumental they were widely attributed to the mythical Cyclopes, Sparta conspicuously persisted as an unfortified settlement for the greater part of its extensive history. This was not due to any deficiency in resources or architectural expertise on the part of the Spartans to construct defensive edifices. Rather, it was a conscious and deliberate choice, one that profoundly reflected their distinctive philosophy of security and their unique understanding of what truly constituted enduring strength. As was purportedly uttered by the venerable Spartan king Agesilaus II when he was questioned concerning the notable absence of city walls, "Behold, these are the ramparts of Sparta," as he gestured expansively towards his disciplined citizens, clad in their characteristic simple red cloaks. However, instead of concentrating solely on the dramatic facets of Lacedaemonian martial prowess that so often pervade popular imagination, we shall endeavor to explore the more subdued, quotidian reality of life within an unwalled city, examining the nuanced psychological impacts, the pragmatic adaptations, and the robust social structures that collectively rendered this uncommon decision both feasible and enduringly sustainable. Envision a nebulous dawn in the Eurotas Valley, the fertile basin where Sparta was strategically situated. The sun's nascent rays have not yet succeeded in piercing through the low-hanging clouds that frequently coalesce overnight in this riverine depression. A Spartan woman, Cleomatis by name, awakens with the sun, as is her daily custom, and steps forth from her unassuming dwelling. Unlike women residing in fortified cities, who might need to traverse a significant distance before reaching a gate to exit into the surrounding countryside, Cleomatis possesses an unhindered vista directly from her threshold, across open, unobstructed terrain, towards the encircling hills. This immediate and unobstructed communion with the surrounding topography intrinsically molds her perception of home in ways distinctly different from those experienced by Athenian or Theban women. There exists no distinct demarcation line where the urban periphery abruptly concludes and the rural expanse commences. No dramatic, jarring transition between metropolitan and pastoral environments. Instead, Sparta merges imperceptibly with its natural environs, its habitations gradually becoming more dispersed towards the fringes, ultimately yielding to the fertile fields and venerable olive groves that tirelessly sustain its populace. The day for Cleomatis commences with her customary morning rituals, which include fetching water for her household from the communal neighborhood well. As her hands expertly maneuver the rope and pulley mechanism, she exchanges subdued salutations with fellow citizens similarly occupied, drawing their own daily supply. Their discourse is distinctly utilitarian, centered on the immediate requirements of the day ahead, punctuated by minor remarks concerning the prevailing weather conditions or recent local occurrences. Notably absent from their chit-chat is any speculation regarding the arrival of foreign merchants through non-existent city gates, for Sparta possessed no such fortifications, and indeed, external traders were generally dissuaded from frequenting the city. This architectural peculiarity represented one of the subtler yet profound repercussions of being an unwalled polis. Sparta maintained an exceptional degree of cultural insularity when compared to its Hellenic counterparts. Without the inherent control point that city gates naturally afforded, regulating who entered the community became considerably more challenging, necessitating the implementation of alternative mechanisms for overseeing access. The Spartans ingeniously addressed this by enforcing stringent directives pertaining to foreigners and cultivating a societal framework wherein outsiders were instantly discernible, their presence a stark contrast to the homogeneous populace. Upon making her way back to her dwelling, Cleomatis encounters a Lacedaemonian citizen named Charillus, who is vigorously engaged in his daily physical regimen within the interstitial areas connecting the houses. In stark contrast to inhabitants of fortified settlements, who typically performed their exercises within specific athletic facilities or drill fields, Spartans seamlessly wove physical conditioning into every facet of their environment, lacking any ambiguous demarcation between public and private domains, or indeed, between the urbanized area and the wilder periphery. Their quotidian pursuits permeated the environmental fabric in a manner that would have undoubtedly appeared peculiar to other Hellenes. Their entire surroundings served as a gymnasium, fostering a constant state of readiness. As the forenoon progressed, the ethereal veil of morning mist dissipated, unveiling the formidable peaks that formed an inherent circumvallation around the fertile Eurotas Valley. These towering natural formations, rather than any artificial ramparts, constituted Sparta's primary bulwark. The city's precise location had been judiciously selected, characterized by few, readily traversable defiles that could be effectively garrisoned by comparatively modest contingents. Thus, the very topographical configuration of the land afforded safeguards that other polis were compelled to construct for themselves through laborious engineering. Proximal to the heart of the community, a cohort of septennial youths commences their daily instruction within the agoge, the renowned Lacedaemonian pedagogical regimen that systematically separated young males from their familial abodes and integrated them into shared residential quarters, wholly oriented towards martial conditioning. A seasoned tutor named Durkidas observes them with folded arms, his mien impassive as they execute fundamental exercises. Durkidas had rendered service to the polis in both conventional military expeditions and within the often unacknowledged yet vital frontier surveillance apparatus. Because Sparta possessed no fortifications, it depended upon unceasing watchfulness across its borders. Alternating cohorts of citizens meticulously kept vigil at crucial mountain defiles and along the frequently traversed arteries leading into the Laconian region, the territory encompassing Sparta. This obligation was neither deemed exceptional nor onerous. It was an intrinsic component of the Lacedaemonian quotidian existence. A citizen might dedicate multiple weeks annually to a forward station, subsisting austerely, diligently observing wayfarers' distant advance, and thoroughly interrogating individuals desiring ingress into Lacedaemonian domain. This comprehensive system fashioned a kind of intangible barrier, one forged from vigilant human awareness rather than inert masonry. With the approach of noon, Cleomatis convenes with a group of other females to survey a shared horticultural plot, situated in an area that would, in other polis, typically be demarcated as beyond the civic perimeter. The women labor systematically, meticulously, scrutinizing vegetation for indications of morbidity or parasitic infestation, gathering ripe produce, and deliberating on forthcoming cultivation. Their discourse eventually shifts to contemporary reports of Athenian maritime maneuvers, intelligence conveyed by a courier the previous day. This scenario highlights another significant ramification of Lacedaemon's unfenced condition. Information flowed through distinct channels here compared to cities possessing unequivocal ingress points. Without gates, where tidings inherently congregated as travelers arrived, Sparta cultivated a more distributed information-gathering apparatus. Numerous minor frontier posts diligently amassed and transmitted data. Lacedaemonian envoys returning from state affairs furnished valuable insights and observations. The circumscribed number of sanctioned foreign guests underwent meticulous interrogation upon their departure. The cumulative result was that intelligence propagated throughout the Lacedaemonian populace with greater gradualness and uniformity than in cities where it might first accumulate amongst those proximate to the portals or port. By the time Cleomatis and her companions discussed the Athenian naval movements, the majority of Lacedaemonian adults were already cognizant of this information, having received it through overlapping networks of communication. Subsequent to cultivating the plot, Cleomatis proceeds towards the locale, where juvenile females are engrossed in their distinct regimen of physical conditioning. In contrast to other Hellenic polis where feminine instruction and athletic pursuits were restricted or entirely absent, Lacedaemon fostered corporeal maturation for girls as zealously as for boys, albeit with a divergent pedagogical focus and organizational framework. Absent fortifications delineating a precise civic perimeter, these exercise zones occupied the interstices of housing agglomerations, rather than existing within officially demarcated establishments. As she observes her progeny partaking in a grappling drill, Cleomatis shares insights with a fellow matriarch. Neither female voices apprehension regarding their daughters engaging in endeavors that would undoubtedly outrage the citizens of Athens. The Lacedaemonian perspective on societal sex assignments, much like their approach to city boundaries, proved more pliable than elsewhere in Greece, not stemming from enlightened philosophical tenets, but from a utilitarian acknowledgement that robust women bore vigorous offspring and were capable of safeguarding family estates when male kin were away on campaign. The conspicuous lack of fortifications profoundly influenced the Lacedaemonian psyche in nuanced, yet deep-seated manners. Citizens cultivated an alternative understanding of communal safety, one predicated entirely upon individual and collective preparedness rather than material obstructions. The perpetual ocular affirmation that no lithic edifice insulated them from prospective perils fostered a pervasive communal watchfulness and mutual reliance, qualities that formidable ramparts might have otherwise attenuated. This unique psychological orientation evinced itself in quotidian customs that would undoubtedly appear atypical to citizens accustomed to life within fortified cities. Consequently, Spartans seldom amassed ostentatious riches or opulent effects. This practice stemmed partly from their renowned asceticism, but also from the pragmatic understanding that overt affluence within an unfortified settlement would serve as both an irresistible enticement for external marauders and prove considerably harder to safeguard. They cultivated building aesthetics that prioritized utility above display, with individual residences conceived as self-sufficient defensive modules, rather than depending on comprehensive civic safeguards provided by encompassing walls. As the vespertine hours drew nigh, Charillus concludes his customary martial obligations and reunites with Cleomatis at their humble abode. Their supper-time repast is unadorned, a frugal fare of barley loaves, curds, olea, and a modest dilution of wine. While the notorious melas zomos, a concoction of pork, blood, and vinegar, might be presented during more ceremonial gatherings, everyday meals unequivocally prioritize sustenance over gustatory delight, a quintessential manifestation of the utilitarian Lacedaemonian ethos. Subsequent to their repast, as the crepuscular glow mellows the terrain, Charillus proceeds to the crest of a proximate elevation, accompanied by their decennial progeny. This vespertine observance, involving the meticulous scrutiny of the ingress routes to the polis as night descends, is not an official commission, but rather a profound custom many Lacedaemonian progenitors instill in their offspring. They remain silently vigilant, the paterfamilias periodically indicating topographical characteristics. Yonder cleft between those eminences marks the trajectory of the thoroughfare from Tegea, he might instruct. Observe the shifting interplay of penumbras across that expanse. An individual traversing it would be discernible through their disturbance of the prevailing schema. This specialized tutelage in ecological cognizance represents a further fundamental adjustment to an existence devoid of fortifications. Lacedaemonian youth matured comprehending their terrain not merely as a backdrop, but as a fluid, dynamic protective mechanism, instead of perceiving safety as a commodity furnished by immutable edifices. They acquired the faculty to interpret nuanced indicators of perturbation or ingress mastering the ability to differentiate routine agrarian operations from anomalous patterns of motion, potentially signaling perils. As profound tenebrosity envelops the Eurotas Valley, the unfenced character of Lacedaemon becomes arguably most salient in the nocturnal protocols of its citizenry. In stark contrast to denizens of fortified metropolises, who could repose once the portals were secured and barred for the evening, Lacedaemonians upheld a decentralized watchfulness across the entire nocturnal period. Systematic surveillance teams traversed and encircled the community. Familial units rotated the duty of tending sentinel flames. Junior males could be designated to slumber at pivotal locations instead of within their customary lodgings. This pervasive system was not perceived as onerous or anxiety-inducing. It was merely the Lacedaemonian custom, as inherent to their existence as the lithic ramparts of Athens were to the Athenians. The arrangement forged a society where communal safety constituted the perpetual, unspoken obligation of every individual, instead of an onus consigned to specialized sentinels or inanimate edifices. Prior to seeking nocturnal repose, Cleomatus verifies that their domestic armaments remain in optimal repair and are strategically placed for immediate deployment should exigency demand. A further customary practice within Lacedaemonian households. Afterwards, she convenes with Charillus on the modest sheltered portico of their habitation, where they recline in tranquil, unspoken communion, observing the stellar emergence above the unfortified settlement. Their profound feeling of safety emanates not from formidable ramparts or colossal bulwarks, but rather from an unwavering conviction in their own capabilities, the steadfastness of their fellow citizens, and the efficacy of their sustained societal framework. The fundamental lack of circumvallation has molded not merely their polis's corporeal configuration, but also their comprehensive methodology for communal organization and martial safeguarding, thereby forging a unique Lacedaemonian psychological disposition that prioritizes human readiness above physical barriers and champions distributed vigilance over centralized protection. As individuals pause to contemplate this reflective account, they might be prompted to consider the myriad visible and invisible boundaries that shape their own existence. These metaphorical walls, constructed ostensibly for safeguarding, occasionally constrain one's outlook, while conversely, an embracing openness can engender both vulnerability and profound resilience. The historical example of Sparta serves as a poignant reminder that true security manifests in diverse forms, and what might initially appear as exposure could, in fact, cultivate a more profound and enduring fortitude. Our ensuing narrative will delve into the often overlooked contributions of the industrious laborers who ensured the celebrated oracle at Delphi was accessible to countless supplicants. These diligent road builders, through their meticulous and patient endeavors, forged a vital connection between divine sagacity and the human realm, meticulously placing stones and engineering pathways that facilitated spiritual journeys. We shall now redirect our measured exploration through the annals of ancient Greece, focusing our attention on a collective whose indispensable efforts rendered possible one of antiquity's most renowned spiritual destinations. The skilled road builders responsible for the creation and ongoing upkeep of the crucial routes leading to Apollo's oracle at Delphi. While historical records and mythological narratives predominantly immortalize the enigmatic prophecies, the revered priestesses, and the architectural splendor of the magnificent temple, scant attention is typically afforded to the diligent hands that painstakingly laid the very stones, ensuring pilgrims could ascend the challenging mountain paths safely. Delphi's geographical placement was far from a matter of convenience. Perched majestically on the elevated slopes of Mount Parnassus, with the formidable Phaedriades cliffs towering above, the sanctuary was deliberately positioned to be removed from effortless access. The arduous journey itself was conceived as an intrinsic component of the spiritual experience, a demanding physical undertaking designed to mirror the rigorous mental preparation required for consulting the deity. However, without expertly constructed and diligently maintained roads, this pilgrimage would have transcended mere difficulty, frequently becoming an insurmountable feat. Envision a brisk spring dawn, several decades preceding the zenith of classical Greek civilization. The nascent sun has just commenced its ascent, casting its illuminating rays upon the eastern face of Mount Parnassus, yet the valleys below remain cloaked in profound shadow. Along a particular segment of the sacrosanct thoroughfare that meanders upwards towards Delphi, a man named Timoculus is already engaged in his labors, perpetuating a cherished family legacy that spans 3 generations. Timoculus holds no priestly office, nor does he claim prophetic insight. He is a master road builder, an integral member of a specialized cadre of workers whose collective expertise harmonizes sophisticated engineering acumen, formidable physical prowess, and an intimate, almost intuitive comprehension of this specific terrain. His hands bear the indelible marks of years spent manipulating unyielding stone, calloused and hardened. His visage is etched and weathered by unceasing exposure to the relentless sun and persistent winds. At the age of 43, he has dedicated his life to working on the roads leading to Delphi, since he possessed the strength to transport modest stones, initially assisting his father, and subsequently assuming full responsibility for designated sections, after demonstrating his exceptional proficiency. On this particular morning, Timoculus and his compact team are diligently engaged in rectifying the damage inflicted by the winter's torrential rains. Several segments of the critical retaining wall have shifted precariously, resulting in the erosion of portions of the road surface. Theirs is a task demanding patience and methodical precision. First, meticulously clearing away the accumulated debris, then carefully repositioning the dislodged stones, and finally, introducing fresh material to meticulously restore the integrity of the road surface. Their implements are rudimentary, yet effective. Wooden levers for leverage, robust ropes for securing, and hammers for shaping recalcitrant stone when exigency demands. There is no reliance on advanced technological marvels, only the cumulative wisdom of generations applied with unwavering diligence. As they toil, their conversations remain subdued, touching upon the quotidian rhythms of life, familial concerns, the fluctuating market price of olive oil, and speculative musings on the potential severity of the forthcoming summer. Periodically, their discourse shifts to the pilgrims they have observed traversing this very road, which city-states appear to be dispatching a greater number of envoys recently. Whether the caliber of offerings being conveyed to Apollo has undergone any discernible alteration, and how the comportment of travelers varies depending on their geographical origins. These road builders possess an astute observational capacity, noticing nuances that the pilgrims themselves might entirely overlook. They can discern which travelers are embarking upon their inaugural journey to Delphi by their measured pace and their discernible reactions to breathtaking vistas that suddenly unfold along the winding path. They readily identify returning visitors, who habitually pause at the exact same vantage points, year after year. They are intimately aware of which particular sections of the road present the greatest challenges for elderly pilgrims, or for those laboriously transporting wheeled carts laden with votive offerings. By the middle of the day, the team has achieved substantial progress. Timokola straightens, stretching his back, his gaze ascending the mountain towards the sanctuary, which remains tantalizingly concealed from his current vantage point. He has personally visited the temple itself only a handful of times, despite dedicating decades to maintaining its arduous approaches. The road builders occupy a fascinating interstitial position, absolutely indispensable to the sanctuary's operational efficacy, yet distinctly separate from its ceremonial rites and formal functions. As they partake in a brief respite, sharing simple provisions of bread, cheese, and diluted wine beneath the generous canopy of a sprawling plane tree, a procession of pilgrims passes by, distinguished representatives from a city in Sicily, en route to seek the oracle's counsel regarding a proposed colonial undertaking. The pilgrims, their minds preoccupied with their destination and the weighty questions they carried, scarcely registered the presence of the workers quietly resting by the roadside. Timokolas and his companions, however, observed them with a mild, discerning interest, taking note of their sartorial choices, the evident quality of their provisions, and the nature of the offerings they transported. Over generations, the road builders have cultivated an informal yet remarkably precise taxonomy of pilgrims. They frequently possess an uncanny ability to predict, with surprising accuracy, which city-states are experiencing periods of prosperity or hardship, which are contemplating military engagements, and which are grappling with internal political strife, all extrapolated from subtle patterns they discern in those journeying to Delphi. That particular group will undoubtedly remain for at least 3 days, remarks Cleon, the youngest member of the team. They have brought ample provisions, and they are proceeding with meticulous care, given those covered objects, valuable offerings that will necessitate a proper ceremonial presentation. Timokolas offers a knowing nod of assent. After decades spent observing the ceaseless flow of travelers, such observations come as instinctively as noticing shifts in meteorological patterns or the cyclical rhythms of flora. The road builders possess a distinctive form of wisdom, one that, while different from, nonetheless complements the divine pronouncements dispensed by the oracle itself. A pragmatic and profound understanding of human patterns and behaviors, garnered from their uniquely privileged vantage point. Following their brief interlude of rest, the arduous work recommences. This afternoon's specific endeavor involves meticulously reinforcing a perilous switchback section where the road executes a sharp, challenging turn around a prominent rocky outcrop. It is a task demanding exceptional precision, requiring an intuitive comprehension of how water will course during periods of heavy rainfall, how weight will be judiciously distributed when heavily laden carts traverse, and how the insidious roots of nearby trees might gradually compromise the careful placement of stones. As they labor, Timokolas imparts his accumulated knowledge to Cleon, not through formal didactic instruction, but through quiet, practical demonstrations and occasional pithy comments. This particular stone needs to be seated more deeply. Observe how this one possesses a natural curvature that will effectively channel water towards the drainage conduit. We shall position the flattest stones on the uppermost layer to facilitate easier pedestrian traversal. This is precisely the pedagogical method by which Timoculas himself learned from his father and his father before him. Knowledge transmitted through shared physical exertion and meticulous, attentive observation. The road leading to Delphi is not merely a singular construction project, but rather a profound, multi-generational commitment to continuous maintenance and incremental improvement. Certain sections meticulously follow routes established centuries prior, gradually evolving from rudimentary dirt tracks into properly formalized, stone-paved thoroughfares. Other portions represent innovative solutions to the perennial challenges posed by the mountain's complex geology and unpredictable weather patterns. Different stretches of the road conspicuously display varying building techniques, serving as a tangible historical record of evolving knowledge and methodologies. In one area, an older section employs colossal, irregularly shaped stones meticulously fitted together with smaller pieces wedged firmly between them. Conversely, a newer segment demonstrates more uniform cutting of stones and a greater mastery of gradient control. The road thus functions simultaneously as vital, practical infrastructure and a living historical document, eloquently revealing shifts in technology and architectural approaches over the passage of time. As the afternoon inexorably yields to the encroaching evening, Timoculas and his dedicated team commence the systematic gathering of their tools. They will not undertake the descent to the village nestled below, but will instead spend the night within a modest shelter specifically maintained for road workers at this elevated altitude. These unassuming structures, comprising little more than sturdy stone walls crowned with wooden roofs, are strategically positioned at regular intervals along the arduous mountain roads, thereby enabling maintenance teams to operate with optimal efficiency, obviating the necessity of daily ascents and descents. The shelter contains rudimentary sleeping platforms, a central hearth for both cooking and warmth, secure storage for essential tools and emergency provisions, and an ingeniously designed water system meticulously crafted to collect rainfall. While it certainly does not conform to the standards of comfort found in the towns below, it is intimately familiar to Timoculas, who has spent innumerable nights in similar austere accommodations throughout his extensive working life. As they meticulously prepare a simple evening repast, another traveler passes, an elderly man making his slow and deliberate descent from the sanctuary. He pauses momentarily upon perceiving the road workers, approaches their flickering fire, and courteously inquires if he might rest briefly before recommencing his arduous journey. They extend a warm welcome, offering him a place by the comforting fire and a cup of diluted wine. The venerable old man reveals that he has been undertaking this sacred pilgrimage annually for many decades, long enough, he recounts, to vividly recall when this particular section of road was significantly different, prior to the substantial improvements implemented during Timoculus's father's era. He speaks of these transformative changes with profound appreciation, noting how considerably easier the journey has become, particularly for older visitors such as himself. This rare exchange represents a direct acknowledgement for work that typically goes unnoticed and uncelebrated. The diligent road builders do not receive the accolades or formal recognition bestowed upon priests or official sanctuary functionaries. Their names are conspicuously absent from the numerous inscriptions that adorn Delphi's monumental structures. Yet, their tireless labor profoundly impacts every facet of the oracle's operation, facilitating the unimpeded flow of questions, offerings, and divine wisdom that fundamentally defines the sanctuary's enduring purpose. As darkness descends upon the formidable mountain, their solitary guest proceeds along his downward journey, navigating the rugged terrain with deliberate caution, supported by his trusty walking stick. Timochalas and his dedicated crew transition into their customary evening rhythm, meticulously inspecting their implements, deliberating on the ensuing day's tasks, and engaging in hushed discourse before succumbing to slumber. From their elevated vantage point, they discern tiny pinpricks of light blossoming in the expansive valley beneath, indicative of individual homes illuminating their nocturnal lamps. Overhead, countless constellations begin to manifest in the crisp, unblemished mountain atmosphere. This liminal existence, neither wholly integrated into the sacred precinct above nor the communal settlements below, has profoundly molded a distinct viewpoint among these diligent road artisans. They perceive their role as enablers and conduits, rather than central participants in the profound spectacle of spiritual inquiry. Their profound gratification emanates not from public acclaim or individual commendation, but from the practical efficacy of their labor. From the profound understanding that, owing to their painstaking endeavors, an aged devotee can securely undertake his yearly sacred journey. Civic delegates can convey precious votive tributes unimpaired, and an anxious guardian can present a gravely ailing offspring to solicit celestial succor. Timochalas drifts into slumber, his mind preoccupied with a specific engineering conundrum scheduled to confront his team later in the week. A problematic stretch of road where aqueous elements consistently compromise their prior structural remedies, necessitating an innovative methodology. His final cognizant reflections are not directed towards deities or prescient pronouncements, but rather towards the precise arrangement of masonry and the optimal inclination of drainage channels, the tangible, intricate dilemmas that have commanded his intellect throughout his entire professional existence. As he reposes, devotees persist in their nocturnal journey along the thoroughfare he diligently upholds. Some traversing the darkness illuminated by flickering torchlight, ardently striving to arrive at the sacred precinct by the first blush of dawn. Their feet tread upon surfaces meticulously fashioned by successive generations of Timochalas's lineage and kindred spirits, finding firm grip on stones strategically positioned to afford steadfast stability. Their roots safeguarded by robust retaining walls ingeniously conceived to endure the severity of winter tempests and the deluge of summer downpours. The renowned sagacity of the oracle, those enigmatic forecasts that influenced monumental choices impacting innumerable individuals, disseminated across the globe along these identical arteries, conveyed by supplicants journeying back to their respective urban centers. These vital pathways functioned as channels not merely for corporeal transit, but for the dynamic flow of concepts, inquiries, and celestial guidance between Delphi and the expansive global community. While one finds repose and attends to this softly recounted narrative, a contemplation might arise regarding the frequently unacknowledged underpinnings that sustain the more lauded dimensions of human aspiration. The unassuming, yet indispensable labor that forges the bedrock for accomplishments more conspicuously etched into collective memory. Akin to Timochalas and his diligent cohorts in road construction, countless individuals make pivotal contributions to shared human experiences, even as their identities remain predominantly obscured from the annals of historical record. For our subsequent narrative, we shall encounter another individual of comparable obscurity. The person tasked with tabulating the votive offerings dedicated to Athena, whose scrupulous documentation furnished profound revelations concerning both sacred observances and the fiscal existence of classical Athens. As we persist in our tranquil exploration of the often unnoticed facets of ancient Hellenic society, let us direct our focus towards a man whose occupation was fundamental to the efficacious operation of Athenian religious practice, yet whose appellation is conspicuously absent from any celebrated chronicles. He possessed neither the priestly authority nor the political stature. He was not a philosopher whose pronouncements would reverberate across epochs, nor an artisan whose masterpieces would ignite the imagination of successive eras. He was, quite simply, an enumerator of oblations, the individual meticulously cataloging every gift presented to Athena, the revered tutelary deity of Athens. His appellation was Philocrates, and for a remarkable span of 27 years, he occupied a role that seamlessly integrated the attributes of a financial auditor, a meticulous overseer, a comprehensive stock controller, and a devout ecclesiastical administrator. Each single offering destined for Athena's revered sanctuary on the Acropolis underwent his exacting examination. Every creature immolated, every liquid oblation ceremoniously dispensed, every artifact consecrated, all were conscientiously inscribed by his scrupulous hand onto both waxen tablets and elongated papyrus parchments. Envision a pristine Athenian vernal aurora, the sort where the radiant illumination appears to infuse the Parthenon's marble with an intrinsic luminescence. Philocrates, now having attained his 53rd year, has already been diligently engaged in his duties for several hours. He commences his day prior to daybreak on most occasions, a regimen cultivated in his formative years and sustained through countless decades of unwavering adherence. His operational station is a modest chamber adjoined to the temple complex, devoid of ostentation or grandeur, yet eminently functional, benefiting from ample natural light streaming through a south-facing casement, and equipped with repositories laden with documentation instruments and archival records. His matutinal regimen commences with a thorough re-examination of the preceding day's entries, cross-referencing his numerical summations against the tangible proof still extant. The residual cinders within the sacrificial hearths, the crimson vestiges of libations upon the altars, and the recently positioned devotional objects on the designated shelves. This rigorous verification is not born of a lack of confidence in his own calculations, but rather from the conviction that precision in affairs pertaining to the divine is not simply commendable diligence, but an inviolable sacred obligation. An erroneously tallied oblation could signify an inadequate tribute to Athena. A disregarded offering might insinuate dereliction in divine ministration. The instruments employed in Philocrates' vocation are unpretentious yet effective. Wooden tablets overlaid with a thin stratum of wax for ephemeral daily annotations. Sheets of papyrus reserved for enduring archival documentation. Slender reed styluses. Pigment derived from the excrescences of oak trees, and a modest assortment of computational aids, small stones for elementary enumeration, and a sophisticated abacus for intricate summations. His hands bear the indelible imprints of his chosen craft, not the hardened epidermal layers indicative of strenuous manual exertion, but rather the faint, telltale discoloration of ink encircling his nail beds, a subtle curvature in his right index digit resulting from countless years of diligent script and a minor cautery mark on his left palm, a remnant from an unfortunate mishap involving sealing wax many years prior. As the morning progresses towards its zenith, the tempo of activity within the temple precinct intensifies. This particular day does not mark a significant religious festival, merely an unremarkable, typical day within the bustling metropolis of Athens. Yet even such commonplace days invariably usher in a consistent flow of devotional tributes. A prosperous merchant, having recently concluded a lucrative commercial expedition, presents a finely wrought silver goblet for consecration. A grateful mother, whose offspring has recuperated from a debilitating malady, dedicates a diminutive terracotta effigy. A diligent farmer tenders a caprine animal for immolation and expresses profound gratitude for the life-sustaining precipitation that preserved his agricultural yields. Each individual oblation adheres to prescribed ceremonial guidelines, with ordained priests or priestesses executing the requisite sacred rites. Philocrates maintains his vigil from a vantage point subtly peripheral to the central proceedings, not occupying a prominent role in the rituals themselves, yet indispensable for their accurate documentation. He meticulously registers not merely the occurrence of each sacrifice or dedication, but also granular specifics: the maturity and condition of the livestock, the artistry and constituent matter of the artifacts, the social standing of the donor, and the explicitly declared objective of the offering. The meticulous documentation of these particulars holds significance for a multiplicity of justifications. Firstly, they facilitate the discernment of evolving trends and recurrent motifs within devotional customs across extended temporal spans. Secondly, they yield invaluable intelligence regarding the prevailing fiscal climate of Athens. It is frequently observed that more opulent tributes tend to materialize during periods of economic flourishing, whereas seasons of austerity are characterized by humbler endowments. Thirdly, these records establish an authoritative archive that can be referenced should inquiries emerge concerning the faithful adherence to established religious observances. Lastly, they critically assist temple administrators in overseeing logistical exigencies, such as the equitable apportionment of consecrated animal flesh, or the judicious arrangement of votive artifacts within the finite confines of the sacred edifice. Approaching the meridian, Philocrates indulges in a concise respite, perambulating with measured steps along the circumference of the venerable temple. This quotidian observance affords his vision a necessary reprieve from the rigors of minute scrutiny, and simultaneously furnishes an interval to internalize the profound sanctity of the edifice he dutifully attends. Notwithstanding his innumerable encounters with the Parthenon, he invariably finds himself lingering to contemplate the captivating interplay of mutable illumination upon its intricate sculptural reliefs, or the ingenious manner in which the imperceptible inflections of its columns artfully conjure an illusion of absolute rectilinearity. In the course of his perambulation, he chances upon a fellow functionary, Platon, who is entrusted with the meticulous upkeep of the temple's fiscal archives. Their respective responsibilities exhibit areas of convergence, yet are not entirely congruent. Whereas Philocrates diligently enumerates every offering irrespective of its pecuniary worth, Platon's purview is exclusively concentrated on monitoring items of significant intrinsic value and monetary tender. Their exchange is succinct and pragmatic, addressing a variance detected in the preceding month's accounts that necessitates rectification, and the impending festivities whose elaborate arrangements are anticipated to amplify their respective occupational burdens. Resuming his responsibilities, Philocrates dedicates the entirety of the afternoon to meticulously cataloging the particulars of a substantial sacrificial rite underwritten by one of the city's affluent dynastic households. This prodigious oblation, comprising numerous bovine animals, necessitated exhaustive documentation, not solely pertaining to the creatures themselves, but also detailing the subsequent allocation of their flesh. Specific allocations were designated for the sacerdotal order, other shares devolved to the patron family, and a portion was apportioned among the citizenry participating in the communal immolation, guaranteeing an equitable and ceremonially appropriate dissemination, in strict accordance with established custom, constituted a considerable organizational predicament that partially resided within Philocrates' purview of oversight. While Philocrates diligently progresses through these intricate computations, a youthful individual named Theocritos maintains a silent, attentive vigil. He has been designated as Philocrates' apprentice and prospective inheritor of the role, assimilating the convoluted methodology of documentation that has been refined and transmitted across successive generations. The office of sacrifice enumerator is not a patrimonial entitlement, but rather necessitates comprehensive tutelage, encompassing not solely proficiency in arithmetic and calligraphy, but also profound comprehension of ecclesiastical ordinances, astute identification of diverse categories of oblations, and the sustained cultivation of an intricate equilibrium between bureaucratic efficacy and reverential piety. Philocrates imparts his wisdom not through structured didactic sessions, but rather by means of practical exemplification and intermittent elucidation. Observe closely, he instructs Theocritos, the manner in which we document not merely the quantity of creatures, but also their intrinsic condition. An animal bearing any imperfection must be meticulously recorded, not on the premise that the divine patroness would spurn such contributions from earnest devotees of humble economic standing, but owing to the fact that specific sacred ceremonies unequivocally mandate the use of animals entirely free from blemish. Our comprehensive ledgers thus serve to guarantee the precise concordance between prescribed liturgical demands and the nature of the oblations presented. As the afternoon gradually yielded to the encroaching twilight, a distinguished delegation made its way from a rural deme, a local administrative district situated just beyond the recognized boundaries of Athens. Their purpose was the traditional annual presentation of an offering, a generous quantity of olive oil meticulously harvested from their communal groves. This precious commodity was customarily bestowed to ensure the perpetual burning of the eternal flame within a modest shrine dedicated to the revered goddess Athena. Such consistent and anticipated contributions constituted the very foundation of the temple's daily operations, furnishing the essential provisions required for the uninterrupted performance of its sacred rites and ceremonies. Philocrates, with an innate composure and understated dignity that characterized every one of his interactions, whether with influential civic dignitaries or unpretentious agriculturalists, graciously received the arriving delegates. With practiced discernment, he meticulously examined the olive oil, scrutinizing its limpid clarity and assessing its inherent quality. Following this initial inspection, he proceeded to measure the liquid with scrupulous precision, subsequently entering the exact volume into his meticulously maintained ledger. The delegation observed this entire methodical procedure with an air of respectful attentiveness. The precise quantification served as an undeniable affirmation that their offering was not only properly acknowledged, but would indeed be utilized for its designated sacred purpose. This particular exchange underscored another critical facet of Philocrates' multifaceted responsibilities. His indispensable role as both a reliable witness and an unwavering guarantor, ensuring that all offerings reach their intended, divine destination without deviation. Within a religious framework notably devoid of a singular, centralized governing authority or a definitive corpus of sacred writings, the proper adherence to divine observances rested predominantly upon the scrupulous maintenance of established traditions and the unwavering commitment to transparent practices. The fastidious records diligently compiled and preserved by individuals such as Philocrates were instrumental in guaranteeing that solemn obligations to the pantheon of gods were consistently fulfilled, regardless of inevitable shifts in temple personnel or the fluctuating tides of political circumstances. As the day's luminous intensity began its gentle ebb, softening into the muted hues of approaching evening, Philocrates meticulously finalized his daily tallies and systematically organized his instruments and materials for the ensuing day. This liminal interval, occupying the space between the full brilliance of day and the deep embrace of night, was his customary time for transcribing vital information from temporary wax tablets onto more enduring papyrus scrolls. The serene temple, now largely emptied of its daytime congregants and visitors, offered an ideal environment for the concentrated intellectual labor demanding absolute accuracy. The enduring records meticulously generated by Philocrates served a multitude of functions that extended far beyond mere religious bookkeeping. They progressively became an integral component of Athens's burgeoning institutional memory, comprising invaluable documents that could be readily consulted during the adjudication of disputes, referenced for profound historical perspective, or carefully analyzed to discern patterns necessitating administrative attention. For instance, should periods of severe drought manifest in a discernible decline in animal sacrifices, city officials might prudently note the pressing need for substantial grain imports. Conversely, when the ominous specter of war loomed on the horizon, they might observe a marked increase in votive offerings directed toward Athena in her revered aspect as protectress of the city. Beyond these tangible, practical applications, the meticulously kept records forged a profound and palpable connection between past and present observances. When Philocrates diligently consulted ancient scrolls dating back several decades, some of which might even contain entries inscribed by his predecessors during his own childhood, he actively participated in a venerable continuity of practice, a tradition that gracefully transcended the finite span of individual human lifespans. The profound worship of Athena in Athens had flourished long before his arrival and would undoubtedly persist long after his departure. Yet, for this specific juncture in time, he diligently served as its assiduous chronicler. As evening definitively settled and the soft glow of oil lamps began to illuminate the expansive temple complex, Philocrates commenced his preparations to return to his unassuming dwelling situated within the bustling city below the majestic Acropolis. Prior to his departure, he faithfully observed a small, deeply personal ritual, a brief, heartfelt prayer offered to Athena. This supplication was not made at the grand, publicly accessible altar, but rather at a simple, unadorned shrine nestled discreetly in the corner of his private workroom. It represented a quiet, introspective moment of profound connection between the individual soul and the divine presence, an intimate communion between the meticulous counter and the countless elements he had catalogued throughout his day. Descending from the lofty heights of the Acropolis, Philocrates quietly observed various groups still making their ascent. Individuals drawn to offer evening devotions, or simply to witness the serene transition from daylight to darkness within the hallowed confines of the sacred space. He offered respectful nods to those he recognized, but refrained from engaging in any protracted conversations. After a day dedicated to the careful observation and diligent recording of others' multifarious religious expressions, he greatly cherished this tranquil period for solitary, personal reflection. His accustomed route home led him through the vibrant agora, which was now gradually winding down from the day's fervent commercial activities. He paused momentarily at a familiar bread-seller's stall. The woman, recognizing him as a loyal and regular patron, promptly set aside a particular dark, crusty loaf that he especially favored. Their interaction, though succinct, was imbued with a genuine warmth, a small but significant instance of human connection in a professional role often characterized by detached observation rather than direct interpersonal engagement. At his home, Philocrates maintained a remarkably simple existence. His esteemed position afforded him a modest but entirely dependable income, wholly sufficient to meet his fundamental needs, though it certainly did not generate any substantial personal wealth. His dwelling contained few ostentatious luxuries, yet it housed a small, cherished personal collection of calculating devices originating from various distant regions. These instruments, similar in function to his professional tools, had been painstakingly acquired over many years from itinerant traders or curious visitors to Athens. Each device possessed a subtly distinct design, eloquently reflecting localized mathematical practices, serving as a silent, compelling reminder of how the same fundamental human imperative, in this instance the necessity of counting, found myriad and fascinating expressions across diverse cultures. Following a plain and unpretentious evening meal, Philocrates frequently immersed himself in reading, not religious treatises or profound philosophical texts, but rather practical works focused on the intricacies of mathematics and the principles of measurement. At present, he was diligently poring over a manuscript that elucidated ancient Egyptian accounting methodologies, driven by an insatiable curiosity about how another venerable civilization, with its own complex system of religious offerings, managed its sophisticated record-keeping. This commitment to continuous self-education was by no means a formal requirement of his position, but rather a profound manifestation of his genuine intellectual interest in the intricate systems that facilitate human beings' organized interactions with one another and, indeed, with the divine realm. One might perhaps be compelled to ponder the often unsung efforts of record-keepers throughout the annals of history, those diligent individuals who meticulously crafted the very documentation through which we are now able to comprehend and interpret past societies. Or perhaps one might find value in this poignant reminder that religious observance in ancient Greece encompassed not solely moments of inspired divine communion, but also demanded meticulous, unwavering administrative diligence, where the sacred and the procedural elements existed not in inherent opposition, but rather in an indispensable and harmonious partnership. Let us now shift our contemplative gaze toward perhaps the most frequently overlooked of all the principal Olympian deities. Hestia, the venerable goddess presiding over the hearth and the sanctuary of the home. While Zeus wielded the formidable power of thunderbolts, and Poseidon commanded the vast, tumultuous seas, Hestia's sacred domain was the unassuming hearthfire. Yet no other divine power maintained a more constant and pervasive presence in the tapestry of daily Greek life, and none demanded a more unceasing and dedicated human attention for its perpetual maintenance. Within the intricate hierarchy of the Greek gods, Hestia occupied a truly enigmatic position. Despite being one of the 6 primordial Olympian siblings, a daughter of Kronos and Rhea, and sister to the formidable Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, and Demeter, she made only rare appearances in the rich tapestry of myths or in the countless artistic representations of the divine. She notably chose never to marry or bear children, abstained from the frequent divine squabbles that plagued Olympus, and never embarked upon grand adventures alongside legendary heroes. Nevertheless, despite this conspicuous narrative absence, she was consistently accorded the inaugural portion of every household sacrifice and faithfully maintained sacred fires in the heart of every Greek community. To truly grasp the profound significance of Hestia and the sacred fires under her dominion, it is imperative that we first comprehend the multifaceted, practical, and symbolic importance of the hearth in the fabric of ancient Greek existence. Imagine, for a moment, a modest dwelling in the bustling city of Athens or a tranquil village nestled in the verdant countryside. At its very core, both literally and figuratively, burned the vibrant hearthfire. This was considerably more than a mere cooking flame or a source of warmth. It was the pulsating, living heart of the household, a miniature divine presence intimately residing among mortals. Let us embark upon a journey through a typical day, following one such path, meticulously observing the quiet, yet utterly essential labor involved in sustaining Hestia's enduring presence. Our focus will center upon the home of Diarrhea, a middle-aged Athenian woman whose bustling household comprised her husband Nicias, a skilled carpenter, their 3 lively children, Nicias's aged father, and 2 household slaves. Diarrhea commenced her day well before the first blush of dawn, when the entire house was enveloped in a profound silence, broken only by the soft, rhythmic breathing of the sleeping occupants and the subtle, comforting crackle of the banked hearthfire. Her very first responsibility each morning was to gently coax this fire back to life, not by igniting it anew, a practice reserved for very specific, infrequent circumstances, but by carefully nurturing the smoldering coals that had been painstakingly preserved throughout the preceding night. This morning ritual was never performed with haste or perfunctorily. Diarrhea knelt before the hearth with the quiet, unwavering focus of an individual engaged in a truly sacred endeavor. With deliberate, tender movements, she carefully removed the layer of ashes covering the coals, then added small pieces of kindling, dried herbs, slender twigs, and fragments of straw, and softly exhaled upon them to encourage the nascent flames to strengthen and grow. As the fire steadily gained strength, she offered a brief, whispered prayer to Hestia, not an elaborate or formally structured invocation, but rather the kind of familiar, intimate communication that naturally blossoms between a person and the divine presence they diligently attend to on a daily basis. The hearth itself was a modest structure, a circular clay platform raised slightly above the floor level, strategically positioned so its smoke could ascend through an opening in the roof. It was encircled by a ring of well-worn stones, visibly bearing the indelible marks of many decades of continuous use. This particular hearth had been originally established When Nicias's grandfather constructed the house 2 generations prior, and its sacred fire had been meticulously maintained without interruption ever since, faithfully passed down from mother-in-law to daughter-in-law as the vital household responsibilities transitioned across generations. As Diaris diligently worked with the fire, her movements were neither hurried nor ritualized in any formal prescribed manner. They instead evinced the fluid, almost unconscious efficiency of actions that had been performed thousands of times over the course of her life. Each individual household invariably developed its own distinctive practices for hearth maintenance, small, cherished traditions transmitted through careful observation and diligent practice, rather than through any form of written instruction. The specific manner in which Diaris arranged the kindling, the particular herbs she occasionally added to the flames, the precise pattern in which she swept the area surrounding the hearth, all of these actions eloquently reflected generations of accumulated household custom and wisdom. With the hearth fire duly roused from its slumber, Diaris embarks upon the preparation of the morning repast. The act of cooking over Hestia's sacred flames transcends a mere utilitarian requirement. It represents an ongoing thread of divine service. Here, the demarcation between devout religious observance and the prosaic rhythms of daily existence proves fluid and indistinct. This singular, vital flame, which reverently accepts solemn oblations, simultaneously prepares the family's sustenance, warms their ablution water, and offers comforting heat during the chill of dawn. As other occupants of the dwelling gradually awaken and congregate around the central hearth, each individual recognizes and reveres Hestia's pervasive presence through their own personal customs. Nicias's venerable father, though afflicted by physical constraints that limit his movement, executes a small, reverent inclination towards the dancing flames prior to partaking of his morning sustenance. The younger generation, from their tenderest years, has been assiduously instructed never to defile the fire with spittle, discard refuse into its depths, or regard it with indifference. Not out of mere unfounded belief, but from an ingrained comprehension that the hearth embodies a profound spiritual essence far transcending its material manifestation. Throughout the daylight hours, Diaris or another responsible member of the household maintains a vigilant consciousness of the fire's continuous requirements. Distinct from contemporary devices that permit simple deactivation and subsequent disregard, the traditional hearth demands uninterrupted vigilance. Fuel must be replenished at judicious timings, accumulated ashes meticulously tended, and occasional adjustments made to ensure optimal combustion. This persistent care is not perceived as an onerous obligation, but rather as an inherent cadence, seamlessly woven within the fabric of other domestic undertakings. As midday approaches, Diaris is diligently engaged in the intricate craft of textile production, while simultaneously casting a periodic glance towards the hearth fire. Her youngest offspring, a girl of merely 7 years, occupies a nearby position, absorbing rudimentary skills in the processing of raw fibers. Their discourse flows effortlessly between precise, practical instruction, such as, "You will grasp the wool in this manner between your digits," and a collection of informal narratives, several of which feature the revered Hestia. Recounting her decision to safeguard the primal flame rather than enter into matrimony, how she expertly arbitrates disagreements among the other deities while maintaining scrupulous neutrality, and the manner in which she imparts the virtue of forbearance through the gradual metamorphosis of raw ingredients into sustaining provisions. When a neighbor calls upon the household to procure a cooking implement, she momentarily halts before the hearth upon her entry, a symbolic recognition that her reception extends beyond a mere architectural edifice, welcoming her instead into the sanctuary presided over by another family's Hestia. This nuanced ritual underscores the pervasive interweaving of sacred influence within established communal mores. The hearth, in this context, delineates the threshold between the external and the internal, the public realm and the private sphere, distinguishing the outsider from the honored guest. The foremost and most meaningful hearth ritual coincides with the evening meal, which represents the principal and most fortifying repast of the day, and is typically the occasion for the gathering of all household members. Prior to the commencement of eating, Nicias, in his capacity as paterfamilias, presents a modest share of the prepared food and a few drops of wine to the flames. This act does not constitute an intricate ceremonial immolation accompanied by prescribed invocations, but rather an unadorned recognition of Hestia's preeminence. She is accorded the initial portion because her enduring presence renders all subsequent blessings attainable. The family partakes of their meal within the immediate proximity of the hearth, their assembled circle subtly mirroring the curvilinear configuration of the hearth itself. Dialogue meanders effortlessly through a range of quotidian concerns, tasks fulfilled during the day, necessities to be acquired from the bustling marketplace, tidings gleaned from the public square, and anticipatory plans for an upcoming festival. The fire, in this setting, furnishes not only corporeal warmth and prepared sustenance, but also serves as a central nexus that coalesces the domestic unit into a cohesive fellowship. As twilight descends, the bustle surrounding the hearth progressively wanes. The younger children are escorted to their repose in a separate quarter of the dwelling. Nicias occupies himself with undertaking minor mending to a piece of furniture illuminated by the hearth's glow. His father, meanwhile, recounts an anecdote from his own formative years to the eldest grandson. Diarist finalizes arrangements for the subsequent day's bread-making, carefully laying out ingredients that will be poised for use when she rekindles the flames at the break of dawn. The concluding domestic rite of the day entails the meticulous banking of the fire, a process of covering the embers with a judicious layer of ash to sustain glowing coals through the night, devoid of visible conflagration. This precise operation demands an exact comprehension of ash quantity. An excessive amount could completely extinguish the vital warmth, while an insufficient covering might allow the fire to consume itself prematurely and dissipate its energy before morning. Diarist executes this critical task on most evenings, having honed her proficiency through countless years of dedicated practice. The vital necessity of an unbroken flame within the household becomes strikingly apparent when one contemplates the repercussions of its absence. Should a domestic fire perish entirely, it could not be effortlessly rekindled using rudimentary friction techniques, which were both arduous and unpredictable. Instead, fire had to be procured from an external source, ideally from the civic communal fire preserved within the Prytaneum, the municipal administrative building. This act transcended mere pragmatic utility. It represented a ceremonial re-establishment of ties, acknowledging that individual household fires originated from the shared communal flame. These public hearths effectively symbolized the pervasive influence of Hestia within the municipal sphere. In the vibrant city of Athens, the public hearth situated within the Prytaneum blazed ceaselessly, diligently maintained by appointed civic functionaries. When settlers departed to found nascent communities, they meticulously transported embers from this sacred source to their new location, thereby preserving an uninterrupted bond with their founding polis. In this manner, Hestia's fires interconnected domestic units with their broader communal structures, communities with their historical antecedents, and colonies with their mother cities, forging an enduring thread of permanence spanning geographical distances and historical eras. The upkeep of these civic hearths involved more structured ceremonial practices than their domestic counterparts, yet they still primarily revolved around the pragmatic task of flame management. In certain polis, the custodianship was entrusted to unmarried maidens prior to their nuptials or to elderly women beyond their reproductive prime. In other locales, male dignitaries supervised the fire, albeit frequently with female acolytes performing the physical maintenance. These roles did not constitute ostentatious ecclesiastical positions adorned with grandiose rites, but rather an unwavering quotidian devotion, demanding fortitude and unflagging meticulousness. Returning to Dyrus's home, with the hearth now judiciously prepared for its nocturnal repose, the dwelling settles into tranquility. The final individual to seek slumber pauses momentarily beside the hearth, perhaps brushing the heated masonry of its edge, or perhaps offering a softly uttered valediction to the guardian spirit that will preside over the household through the hours of darkness. Even amidst their sleep, family members continue to be aligned with Hestia's sacred precinct, their nocturnal resting places customarily configured in relation to the hearth's central placement. The tangible edifice encompassing this family, comprising its wooden beams, stone walls, and clay roof tiles, merely provides shelter. However, it is Hestia's perpetual fire that elevates mere refuge into a cherished abode. Should the family ever decide to resettle, they would meticulously transport embers from this sacred source to their new dwelling, thereby guaranteeing the unbroken essence of the identical divine presence spanning various geographical sites. This profound conception of an abode as intrinsically linked to a consecrated flame, rather than solely to a physical structure, profoundly influenced Hellenic notions of affiliation and dispossession. To be without a hearth and home signified a deeper plight than mere material destitution. It represented a severance from the sacred covenant between gods and mortals that rooted personal essence within the collective fabric of kinship and polis. Perhaps one is prompted to contemplate the central anchors within one's personal dwelling, that which unifies and congregates, that which demands consistent nurturing, that which elevates a simple edifice into a cherished locale imbued with significance. Although scarcely any contemporary residences feature literal hearth flames, the innate human yearning for a spiritual nucleus and the sanctity of the domestic sphere endures inviolable across the millennia. For our concluding exploration into the less celebrated facets of ancient Greek existence, let us now direct our focus towards the intricate aquatic networks that interlinked the fragmented topographical expanse of the Hellenic world. Upon these waters, ranging from meandering streams to the expansive Mare Nostrum, traversed myriad modest vessels, piloted by individuals whose identities have faded from historical memory. The unassuming mariners who conveyed legendary figures, astute traders, devout supplicants, and common wayfarers. Though seldom chronicled in epic narratives or scholarly records, these pivotal figures nonetheless provided the indispensable function of interlinkage within a land characterized equally by its maritime and terrestrial contours. So, when we peruse the accounts of Theseus's maritime voyage to Crete to engage the formidable Minotaur, or recount Jason's leadership of the Argonauts in their quest for the fabled Golden Fleece, our attention invariably gravitates solely towards the protagonists themselves. Yet, skilled individuals were indispensable for the command of those vessels, requiring an acute comprehension of the vagaries of atmospheric currents and oceanic flows, and the expertise to pilot through perilous marine routes. The anonymous seafarers, whether either salaried experts or compelled mariners, rendered every legendary expedition feasible through their experiential wisdom and assiduous toil. Let us now envision one such individual, to whom we shall ascribe the appellation Dorius. Having attained his 45th year, Dorius has devoted 3 decades to maritime pursuits. Commencing his career as a mere youth, assisting his progenitor, he now commands his personal modest craft, a resilient wooden skiff approximately 20 feet in linear measure, driven by the combined forces of canvas and oar, contingent upon prevailing circumstances. His customary itinerary links Athens with a constellation of proximate littoral settlements, and periodically extends to more remote harbors when advantageous prospects materialize. We shall accompany Dorius on a quintessential late summer morn at the bustling maritime gateway of Piraeus, Athens's vibrant port. He has presented himself pre-dawn to ready his vessel for the forthcoming day's endeavors, meticulously verifying the integrity of the hull, ensuring that the canvas exhibits no fresh rents necessitating mending, and confirming that the sculls are firmly fastened within their thole pins. These crucial duties are executed with the meticulous diligence of someone whose very existence is predicated upon the unfailing dependability of his apparatus. The boatman's very existence, his capacity to earn a living, fundamentally relies upon the unwavering reliability of his essential equipment. His sailing vessel, though outwardly unassuming, represents the distilled wisdom of countless generations, a tangible testament to the gradual evolution of practical naval architecture. Its meticulously crafted form achieves a delicate equilibrium between stable flotation and swift movement, while also balancing the depth it draws in the water against its overall carrying capacity. The timber, chosen with discerning care, has been expertly fashioned and joined, subsequently rendered impervious to water through the application of pitch. The sail itself, woven from a robust textile, demands consistent treatment to repel the corrosive effects of incessant exposure to the saline environment. Each individual component of this craft embodies an inherited legacy of knowledge, transmitted from one mariner to the next, seldom committed to written record, yet meticulously preserved through diligent, hands-on application. As the eastern horizon begins to glow with the nascent light of dawn, prospective voyagers gradually converge upon the bustling harbor. Dorius, unlike contemporary transport providers, does not adhere to a rigid, predetermined timetable. His departure is dictated by the accumulation of a sufficient complement of passengers or a suitable volume of cargo, ensuring the journey's economic viability. Nevertheless, his reputation for steadfast dependability precedes him, and seasoned travelers instinctively know they can generally expect to find him prepared to embark by the middle of the morning. Today's initial passenger is a shrewd merchant by the name of Critias, whose destination is a coastal settlement located approximately a 4-hour voyage away. He is conveying delicate samples of Athenian pottery, intended for display to prospective purchasers, a consignment modest in bulk, yet sufficiently valuable to warrant the prescribed transportation fee. Dorius meticulously assists him in carefully securing these precious articles within the boat's compact, sheltered compartment, where they will remain safeguarded from the stinging sea spray. Their exchange is concise and transactional, focusing on the day's meteorological outlook and the anticipated duration of their passage. This encounter is far from their first. Critias undertakes this journey frequently and has developed a decided preference for Dorius's craft over the other options available at the quay. He particularly values the boatman's precise navigational skills and his judicious avoidance of superfluous stops, attributes that prove invaluable when transporting fragile merchandise. As the morning progresses, a diverse array of additional passengers gradually arrive. 2 women embarking on a visit to relatives in the aforementioned coastal town. A young man serving as an emissary, conveying messages between disparate family estates, and an older individual whose specific purpose for travel remains undisclosed, but who settles his fare without hesitation. Each exchanges succinct pleasantries with Dorius, who courteously assists them in boarding and finding suitable places to sit within the confined confines of the vessel. He displays keen attention to the proper distribution of weight, subtly repositioning existing cargo to counteract the arrangement of his human freight. Having satisfied himself with the loading, Dorius casts his gaze skyward and across the water's surface one final time, discerning atmospheric and oceanic cues that most land-bound individuals would entirely overlook. The nuanced configurations of the clouds, the distinctive quality of the morning's illumination, and the behavior of the seabirds congregating near the harbor entrance. The prevailing conditions appear auspicious for employing the sail rather than the oars, at least for the initial segment of their journey. He executes a few minor adjustments to the sail's rigging in preparation for their imminent departure. With a practiced exertion against the dock, the vessel gracefully glides into the expanse of open water. Dorius assumes his customary station at the stern, his hand firmly grasping the steering oar, which functions as the boat's rudder. He seldom utters a word during navigation, reserving speech only for matters of urgent safety or to highlight something of particular interest to his passengers. His entire concentration remains fixed upon his task, diligently monitoring the wind's direction, vigilantly scanning for subtle alterations in the water's hue that might betray submerged dangers, and maintaining an acute awareness of other craft, traversing these frequently congested waterways. The voyage unfolds without incident or unforeseen complications, precisely as Dorius prefers it. He executes subtle, continuous adjustments to their bearing and the position of the sail, deftly compensating for imperceptible shifts in the wind and the prevailing current. To the uninitiated observer, the boat appears to glide with minimal active guidance, charting a steady course along the coastline. Only an individual possessing genuine maritime expertise would perceive the relentless succession of minor judgments and calibrations that collectively create this illusion of effortless forward momentum. As they pass various recognizable landmarks, Dorius mentally records their precise timing against his ingrained internal schedule. He possesses such an intimate familiarity with this particular route that he can accurately gauge their progress without recourse to any measuring instruments beyond the sun's celestial position. This profound knowledge was not acquired through formal academic instruction, but through years of diligent observation and the collective wisdom imparted by veteran boatmen during his apprenticeship in the trade. As midday approached, the wind direction veered, becoming unfavorable for continued sailing. Without a word of complaint, or even a discernible sigh, Dorius pragmatically adjusted their approach, lowering the sail and enlisting two of the more robust passengers to join him at the oars. This seamless transition from propulsion by sail to propulsion by oar was not presented as an inconvenience or an unwelcome setback, but simply as the inherent and necessary adaptation to the capricious conditions that maritime travel inherently demands. As they settled into the rhythmic cadence of rowing, the synchronized dip and pull of the oars created a hypnotic, underlying pulse for the hushed conversations among the passengers. The messenger exchanged local news with the visiting women. The merchant occasionally drew attention to notable features of the passing landscape. Dorius, while maintaining his unwavering concentration on navigation, subtly absorbed their discourse, incrementally augmenting his personal reservoir of regional intelligence. Which households were anticipating visitors? Which communities had recently experienced significant transformations? Which commercial relationships were thriving or, conversely, faltering? This comprehensive information gathering was not driven by idle curiosity or a penchant for gossip, but by a profound, practical necessity. A boatman's livelihood is, in part, predicated upon a nuanced understanding of patterns of human movement and commercial activity, knowing precisely when certain categories of travelers might require transport, which routes might become more or less lucrative, and how shifts in political or economic landscapes might influence maritime traffic. Dorius systematically collected these invaluable insights, progressively constructing a sophisticated mental map of his operational environment that extended well beyond purely nautical considerations. When they briefly paused in a secluded cove, allowing the rowers a much-needed respite and the passengers an opportunity to stretch their legs, Dorius conducted a swift, thorough inspection of the vessel. He meticulously checked for any nascent leaks. It was understood that smaller craft of this era necessitated regular bailing as a standard, operational procedure. Verified that the cargo remained securely fastened, and ensured that the oars had not developed any hairline cracks that might exacerbate with continued use. During this interlude, he exchanged terse greetings with another boatman, whose vessel was headed in the opposing direction. Their conversation, though minimal in words, was rich in critical information, encompassing prevailing water conditions ahead, the presence of any larger ships requiring awareness, and whether harbor officials at their respective destinations appeared to be levying fees with particular zeal on that specific day. This informal, yet highly effective network of communication among mariners served as an invaluable early warning system for any potential factors that might compromise safe passage. As they recommenced their journey, now benefiting from a more favorable wind that permitted a return to sail power, one of the women inquired of Dorius if he had encountered any particularly intriguing travelers recently. This subtly phrased question often serves as an implicit invitation for boatmen to recount tales of unusual passengers or memorable incidents. Dorius responded with a succinct narrative detailing the transport of a sculptor and his nearly finished commission, a substantial marble statue that had necessitated elaborate securing measures to prevent any damage from the boat's constant movement. His storytelling was notably understated, deliberately focusing on the practical logistical challenges rather than any dramatic or sensational elements. This narrative style perfectly reflects a pervasive inclination among professional boatmen to prioritize uneventful voyages over thrilling ones. In their demanding profession, excitement invariably connoted danger or significant difficulty. The most exemplary journeys were those that could be summarized with elegant simplicity. We departed, we traveled, and we arrived safely, entirely, in accordance with all expectations. As they neared their destination in the mid-afternoon, Dorius meticulously shifted his focus to the intricate process of landing. The harbor here was considerably smaller than Piraeus, featuring fewer designated docking structures. He painstakingly assessed the water's depth, the positions of other vessels already secured, and any potential underwater obstructions before precisely charting his approach. The ultimate positioning demanded exquisite control over the boat's momentum, just enough to reach the intended mooring spot, but not so much as to risk a collision with the quay or another craft. Once safely docked, Dorius assisted the disembarking passengers and their cargo with the identical meticulous attention he had demonstrated during the initial loading phase. So he confirmed with Critias the merchant's anticipated need for return transportation, aiding him in coordinating the timing to accommodate the display of his pottery samples, while simultaneously ensuring they could depart with ample daylight remaining for a secure homeward journey. With his outbound passengers and cargo duly delivered, Dorius now needed to secure a return load to render the round trip financially viable. This might entail awaiting prearranged travelers, actively seeking new ones among those visibly lingering at the harbor, or consulting with his regular clientele in this port, who might have immediate transportation requirements. On this particular day, he located a farmer with several substantial oil amphorae needing conveyance to Athens, a straightforward cargo that would be well balanced within his vessel. While patiently awaiting his scheduled departure time, Dorius diligently performed a series of minor maintenance tasks, retying a section of rope that had begun to fray, thoroughly inspecting the sail attachment points for any signs of wear, and undertaking small repairs to a wooden seat that had developed a discernible crack. These ongoing, seemingly insignificant corrections served to preempt the development of more substantial problems and proactively extended the operational lifespan of his cherished vessel. He also seized this opportune moment to stroll to a nearby food vendor, where he purchased a simple, sustaining meal consisting of bread, cheese, and dried fish. His eating habits, much like the majority of his professional practices, underscored a profound prioritization of practicality. Foods that possessed good keeping qualities, required no elaborate preparation, and could be consumed while simultaneously maintaining a vigilant watch over his precious boat. He ate his modest meal while perched at the boat's edge, his attention judiciously divided between the sustenance before him and the dynamic surroundings of the harbor. The homeward voyage unfolds in a manner quite akin to the outbound expedition, with the crew judiciously alternating between the power of the sail and the synchronized rhythm of the oars, as the prevailing maritime conditions necessitate. Throughout this passage, an unwavering vigilance is maintained over both meteorological patterns and the nuanced state of the water, all while ensuring a comfortable yet expeditious journey for every individual on board. As the vessel draws near to Piraeus in the gentle embrace of the early evening, Dorius skillfully pilots his craft through the progressively denser harbor traffic, exhibiting the serene self-assurance born of extensive practical engagement. Following the meticulous mooring of his ship and the careful supervision of the oil amphorae's discharge, Dorius brings his day's demanding labor to its conclusion with a thorough final inspection of the boat and the preparatory arrangements for the subsequent day's expeditions. He conscientiously stows away any items that might be susceptible to pilfering, meticulously coils the ropes into tidy loops to preclude any unwelcome entanglement, and carefully drapes coverings over certain exposed components to shield them from the encroaching dew or any unforeseen precipitation. Prior to making his way to his humble dwelling, situated conveniently close to the bustling harbor, he exchanges succinct pleasantries with fellow mariners, who are likewise winding down their own day's exertions. This interaction transcends mere social discourse. It functions as a vital conduit for the exchange of pertinent information, where observations regarding shifting environmental circumstances, any anomalous occurrences, and prospective commercial ventures are freely shared. Despite the occasional rivalry for clientele, these seafaring individuals collectively sustain a robust collaborative framework, underpinned by a shared professional identity and an inherent mutual reliance, particularly during moments of crisis or exigency. Across the expanse of this seemingly unremarkable day, a day that has, in myriad forms, been reiterated thousands of times throughout Dorius's active professional existence, he has eloquently demonstrated a sophisticated amalgamation of proficiencies. These encompass precise navigation, astute meteorological forecasting, adept personnel management, shrewd business negotiation, essential vessel upkeep, and considerable physical fortitude. Yet, within the annals of recorded history, or the embellished narratives of epic myth, such individuals are typically relegated to the anonymous designation of the boatmen, if indeed they warrant any mention whatsoever. When Theseus, the legendary hero, made his triumphant return from Crete, an unnamed individual expertly guided that ship safely across the vast Aegean Sea. When Odysseus, the resourceful wanderer, finally reached his beloved Ithaca, an unheralded mariner operated the vessel that delivered him to his homeland. And when the inaugural Olympic Theoroi, those esteemed official emissaries, embarked on their journeys to proclaim the sacred truce for the impending games, it was an unseen hand that transported them between the various coastal cities. These unsung facilitators were the indispensable architects of the vital interconnections, arduous voyages, and crucial exchanges that fundamentally characterized and sustained the entirety of Greek civilization. Perhaps we find ourselves compelled to contemplate the myriad unnamed individuals who, in our contemporary epoch, render possible our own peregrinations through the intricate tapestry of the world. These are the dedicated operatives of our sophisticated modern transportation networks, the diligent custodians who meticulously maintain our sprawling infrastructure, and the quiet enablers who facilitate our myriad journeys, both the tangible physical passages and the profound metaphorical odysseys. Much like Dorius and his cohort of ancient boatmen, these contemporary figures forge the foundational connections that permit the seamless operation of all other societal functions, even when their individual contributions remain largely unacknowledged and uncelebrated within the expansive narratives of our prevailing culture. This contemplative reflection serves to illuminate those quotidian realms where ordinary citizens executed the indispensable labor that underpinned the more dramatic occurrences and the prominent personages we habitually venerate in the chronicles of Greek mythology and history. The annals of human experience, collectively known as history, represent the meticulous chronicle of past events, actions, and developments that have shaped civilizations and individual lives across the vast expanse of time. It encompasses not merely a collection of dates and names, but a profound narrative woven from the intricate tapestry of human endeavor. encompassing political upheavals, cultural shifts, technological breakthroughs, and the nuanced evolution of societal structures. This expansive domain seeks to meticulously document and interpret the myriad occurrences that have transpired, from the grand narratives of empires rising and falling to the subtle, everyday interactions that underpin human existence. It delves into the motivations of individuals and groups, the consequences of their decisions, and the enduring legacies they bequeath to subsequent generations, offering a comprehensive panorama of our collective journey. The profound utility of engaging with this intricate record lies in its unparalleled capacity to illuminate the present and offer discerning insights into potential futures. By diligently examining the trajectories of previous eras, scholars and enthusiasts alike can discern patterns, identify causal relationships, and comprehend the complex interplay of forces that have brought us to our current juncture. Learning from the triumphs and tribulations of those who came before us provides an invaluable repository of wisdom, enabling a more informed approach to contemporary challenges and fostering a deeper understanding of human nature itself. Furthermore, it cultivates a crucial sense of identity and belonging, connecting individuals to a larger heritage and grounding their personal narratives within the broader sweep of human achievement and struggle. However, the construction of this historical understanding is far from a monolithic or static enterprise. It is a dynamic and perpetually evolving process. Historians, acting as diligent custodians of the past, meticulously sift through diverse primary sources such as ancient texts, archaeological findings, oral traditions, and official documents to reconstruct narratives with rigorous academic scrutiny. Their work involves not only the discovery of facts, but also the nuanced interpretation of evidence, often leading to ongoing debates and revisions as new information emerges or different perspectives gain prominence. This continuous reevaluation ensures that our understanding remains vibrant and responsive, reflecting the complexities inherent in any attempt to capture the multifaceted realities of bygone eras, acknowledging that historical accounts are often shaped by the perspectives and biases of their chroniclers. Ultimately, the study of history remains an indispensable intellectual pursuit, serving as a vital anchor for collective memory and a powerful catalyst for critical thought. It encourages a profound appreciation for the intricate journey of humanity, fostering empathy for diverse experiences and nurturing an informed citizenry capable of navigating the complexities of the modern world. Through its rigorous investigation and evocative storytelling, history not only preserves the echoes of the past, but also actively informs our present decisions and inspires our aspirations for a more enlightened future, continually reminding us of the enduring human capacity for both profound achievement and devastating folly.